When you think of an interactive movie, what comes to mind? Maybe Hideo Kojima's masterpieces like Metal Gear Solid or Snatcher, or perhaps you experienced Black Mirror's Bandersnatch. Both have something in common. They blur the lines between gaming and cinema. In Metal Gear Solid, the angles and music made you feel like a tactical espionage action hero. With Bandersnatch, Netflix lets you control the story, making it feel like you're shaping the movie. Quantic Dream is no stranger to the interactive movie concept. Last time we uncovered how they first experimented with this in Fahrenheit Indigo Prophecy, a game that used the power of choice to immerse you in the character's emotions. While it might be seen as average among interactive cinematic games today, it was a cult classic that made waves in the industry. Fahrenheit set the stage for Quantic Dream's next big leap, a game that truly embodies the idea of interactive movies and showcases the emotional power of gaming. For this game maximized the PlayStation hardware capabilities and gave gamers the most interactive film-like experience. Welcome back to the Retro Fans Retrospective. Today we're grabbing our umbrellas and taking a look at Quantic Dream's Heavy Rain.
The body of Jeremy Bowles was found this morning on a patch of wasteland in the East End at about 6:30 a.m., 5 days after he was reported missing. An autopsy will be conducted tomorrow to determine the exact cause of death, but going from first indications, it would seem that he drowned. The state
A growing catalog of captivating retrospectives that peel back the layers of gaming's most fascinating and influential titles. From unsung gems to celebrated classics, our deep dives offer fresh perspectives that ignite your passion for the art form. If you enjoy an engaging retrospective that blends insightful analysis with reverence for its subject matter, mash the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. You won't want to miss out on upcoming exploration to the brilliant minds and landmark experiences that have shaped this incredible medium. Let's dive into this.
With the success of Fahrenheit Indigo Prophecy, gamers and critics were impressed with Quantic Dream's cult classic. It was a huge turnaround from the Nomad Soul, Cage's first game that didn't do so well in America. Now that they had a success, it was time for another title. You always want to try to build on the momentum you started. For inspiration, Cage connected with a moment in his life that left him stunned for a second. He had an experience in a crowded shopping mall where he temporarily lost sight of his son Quentin for about 5 minutes. Cage thought his wife was watching their son, while his wife thought Cage was watching him, leading to a brief period of panic. The incident lasted only about 5 minutes, but Cage described them as the longest 5 minutes of his life. Fortunately, Cage's son had simply wandered over to a video game store and was spotted by an alert clerk. This brief 5 minutes will help Cage shape the narrative of the game. He conducted real-life research in Philadelphia to capture the atmosphere of a struggling urban environment. He visited poor areas, spoke to locals, took pictures, and incorporated elements like large factories near houses into the game's setting. Taking inspiration and influences, Cage ended up with a script that was over 2,000 pages long and decided to name the game Heavy Rain. With the narrative in the right direction to follow, it was time to find a publisher. While looking for a publisher, Quantic Dream caught the attention of Microsoft. Initially, Microsoft was interested in working with Quantic Dream after the success of Fahrenheit Indigo Prophecy. David Cage, the head of Quantic Dream, stated that Microsoft really loved Fahrenheit and wanted to do something with us. However, Microsoft became hesitant about publishing Heavy Rain due to its central theme of child kidnapping. David Cage explained that Microsoft got scared by this aspect of the game. According to Cage, they got scared by the fact that Heavy Rain was about kids being kidnapped, and they said, "This is an issue. We want to change it." Well, we could have kidnapped cats, but it would have been a different experience. With the deal between Microsoft and Quantic Dream not going through, David Cage and his team looked elsewhere for a publisher. While looking for a publisher, they fell under Sony's radar. Apparently, Sony was a fan of their previous work and did not have an issue with their current direction. It was at this moment Quantic Dream would make a deal with Sony where they will publish 3 exclusive games for their platform. Looking at the timing, Fahrenheit came out in 2005, just before the 7th generation of gaming began with Sony's release of PlayStation 3 the following year at E3. At the same E3, David Cage and Quantic Dream provided fans with a glimpse of their next project. In 2006, David Cage revealed Heavy Rain: The Casting, a short film and tech demo for Quantic Dream's latest release. It features Mary Smith, a 24-year-old amateur actress auditioning for a role in the game, with David Cage providing the voice of the director. In the tech demo, Mary delivers an intense monologue that leaves audiences intrigued. According to Cage, our objective was to recreate not only likeness of a living actor, but its complete acting performance, particularly its emotional dimension. At Quantic Dream, we believe that emotion will be a key component of the next-gen games, and we are heavily investing in technology to create visual actors over the next several years. By expanding the range of emotions video games has to offer, they will be able to reach a far wider audience. This demo is just the beginning of what can be achieved, but I hope that it really shows the fascinating new possibilities this media will offer in the coming years. The casting was described as one of the more fascinating demos at Sony's PlayStation 3 display during E3 2006. The demo's facial animation system was particularly praised, with every muscle in the protagonist's face moving naturally and conveying realistic eye movement and subtle emotions. Despite the demo being shown without sound, viewers were able to understand the emotional nuances of the scene purely through visual performance, which was considered remarkably impressive. Here is what they saw.
Go ahead, take a seat. Can you give me your name and your age, please?
My name is Mary Smith. I'm 24.
Have you ever taken any acting lessons, Mary?
Not really. I couldn't afford it, but I watch a lot of films and I learn so much by watching them.
Have you shot anything recently?
I've had a few bit parts, little things here and there, nothing very serious for the moment. I'm always too tall, too short, wrong hair. There's always something wrong with me.
Okay, have you learned your lines?
Yes.
Let's get started. Mark it, please.
Casting Heavy Rain, actress Mary Smith, take 1.
And action.
The first time I saw you, I knew you were the one. I thought these things only happened in the movies, you know? The pounding heart, the sweaty hands, and the shaky legs. I was coming out of the theater, and it started pouring heavy rain, so there I was, soaking wet, teeth chattering, freezing cold, and then you came up to me. You looked at me straight in the eyes and you said, "Need an umbrella, miss?" You sent me flowers for weeks and you said you'd love me forever. 3 months later we were getting married. God, it sounds so stupid. It's such a corny romance. But real life, it never ends up being what you think it's going to be. You think it's going to be one big happy fairy tale. And then one day you wake up in an average little house leading an average little life, and your real dreams are about paying the bills and maybe someday getting a bigger TV. And you realize that maybe that wasn't the life you were dreaming of. You realize maybe things could have been different. And maybe I actually could have lived with all of that, but then one day it all just stops. Starts with something small. A little lipstick on a collar. A few nights when you come home a bit late. At first I tell myself that I'm crazy, that you would never do such a thing. But just to ease my mind, one night I follow you as you leave the office. I follow you to the CD hotel where you meet the girl. And then my whole world falls apart. I come home and I cry for hours in my kitchen. I get the gun from the drawer in the bedroom, and I tell myself that if this is all that life has to offer me, then I can do without. But then I change my mind. After all, I'm not the one who's cheating. So, quietly, I wait for you to come home, sitting in my average little kitchen. Obviously, when you get home, you don't suspect a thing. So I press the fucking gun against your forehead and I take a few seconds to watch the fear grow in your eyes. You tell yourself, she won't do it. She doesn't have the guts. She's just trying to teach me a lesson. But you are so wrong, honey. I sentence you to death for turning my life into a soap opera cliche, for stepping on my dreams, for not giving a shit about me all those years, and for lying to me and betraying me and humiliating me. I'm making an example out of you for all the assholes out there who think they can keep on fucking us over and over. Goodbye, my love. So, how was it?
Very nice, very nice.
You think I might stand a chance?
Someone will get in touch with you and let you know.
She wasn't too bad, huh?
Doesn't matter, she's too tall for the part. Next!
With the E3 performance behind them, fans were impressed with the real-time facial animations. Cage aimed to dynamically render facial expressions and emotions, which was cutting edge for its time. To meet players' expectations, Quantic Dream held auditions for their characters. They conducted 14 casting sessions with over 450 people auditioning for parts in the game, but only 90 actors were selected. These 90 individuals had exactly what Cage was looking for. Not only did they need to give a strong physical performance, but they also need to convey emotions, convincingly through their facial expressions. Here we see Leon Akinden's audition and how his face portrays certain emotions. You can see the pain in his eyes, the tone in his voice, and the emotion he conveys, which were exactly what they were looking for.
Connor confessed. You beat him all night to make him talk. He would have confessed to Kennedy's assassination if you asked him. Your confession is a heap of shit. Corder is not the Origami Killer. He's a sick child killer, but he has nothing to do with the disappearance of Sean Mars. We have lost time for nothing. And all this time it continues to rain. According to the weather forecast, we've got less than 12 hours before we reach 7 inches of rainfall. And we haven't the remotest idea where Sean Mars is.
The actors' appearances were generally quite close to their in-game characters. One user comment noted, all the actors look really close to their video game characters. Ethan and Scott look pretty close. Madison does as well. Sam Douglas, who played Scott Shelby, was described as a solid actor that had mostly played bit parts, but was chosen both for the voice and motion capture of Shelby. The casting process seems to have prioritized finding actors who could physically resemble their digital counterparts, likely to aid in the motion capture process and create more realistic character models. The game utilized advanced motion capture techniques for both body movements and facial expressions, so the actors needed to be capable of delivering nuanced physical performances in addition to voice acting. The technologies that Quantic Dream used for Heavy Rain, while innovative, also faced some challenges. Although the game was set to be released in 2008, more challenges arose, necessitating additional time for the project, which Sony granted. This extra development time allowed Quantic Dream to refine the game's mechanics, narrative structure, and emotional depth. David Cage, the director, emphasized the importance of creating a strong emotional connection between players and characters, which required careful crafting of the story and dialogue. The delay also provided the team with the opportunity to integrate advanced technologies that enhanced the game's graphics and gameplay. This included improvements in motion capture and real-time facial animation, crucial for conveying the game's emotional narrative. As development began to wind down, Sony launched a massive marketing campaign for Heavy Rain, featuring demos, TV ads, and a major UK campaign. Sony pulled out all the stops for the new property, and on February 23, 2010, Heavy Rain was released to the world.
We spent about a year doing casting sessions in the UK, in London and in Paris to try to find really the best actors for the main roles. And that was really important because we were not just looking for someone to give us his face or his voice, but we were basically looking for the full actor because then their face is scanned with a 3D scanner, so it's really their face in the game. We recreate the body exactly at the same size and the same height and everything. And then they come on set to shoot the motion capture animations. So we do all the walks, all the interactions, all the dialogues, pretty much everything is shot.
Here what we wanted is to use the system in a way that would give us the possibility to have actors truly play like if they were on a movie set. So they spent a lot of time with David Cage, the director, and Steve Knibely, the assistant director, to make sure that when they come on stage, they know what they have to do.
You're not gonna kill the Antichrist with a revolver, Nathaniel. He's much too powerful for that.
Antichrist, my ass, get the gun out of my face!
Lieutenant Blake is gonna leave the planet right now and return to the realm of shadows. Creature of darkness, I do beseech you to return to the realm of shadows.
They have a full script, and we spent days and days and months just rehearsing with them to make sure they fully understand the story, their character, and they can deliver the performance we accept from them. You know, very often in games you need good performances for cutscenes, sometimes for dialogues, but here it's different because we really needed this level of quality in the performances pretty much in all the game.
You have to absolutely know it, and not just know it, you have to know it backwards and forwards, because the way that it's done, when you get to one of these choices and you have those moments, you have to know all of them very well, because you have to get to that point and then go to one, get to that point, then go to another, get to that point and then go to another, or maybe just do all three in a row, and they're all very different, but the point of departure is the same. And so preparing for that was really quite intense, because again I was working in an imaginary world.
To prepare myself for this particular role, I went to, there's an institute called IGAP, and it's an institute of analytical psychologists, and I went to a few seminars, and specifically to do with forensics and forensic psychology.
If you don't relate to the characters, if you don't feel empathy for them, if you don't believe in what they say and how they feel, then the whole experience would just fall apart. I mean, it doesn't mean anything.
As lead artist, the first and foremost part of my job is to create a character from an actor. And not only make a faithful copy of the actor, but also give him as much personality as possible through 3D design. It means that we use the existing actor as a basis, and then we try to make the character fit his part in the game.
Quality, fucking wonderful, man. Shit, I'm glad I'm not me. I wouldn't want to meet me, man.
Technologically speaking, we focused on very specific areas. We worked very hard on high-level characters in a way never done before. We put all our energy into having the best character rendering and animation. For instance, we made very realistic effects for rain and tears on characters' faces. Our main aim was to set a new benchmark in terms of realism in character rendering, and I believe that this is one of the main differences between Heavy Rain and other games.
Weird thing we had before, he's just lifting his head a bit down on the end of the animation, so this is something we change to make the loop even more discrete so we don't see the repetition. The player is able to move its character, so this is a way to give the control of the character to the player, and this is also a way to introduce some behavior really that are not mechanical, that are not loops. We break the cycle with putting something that moves completely outside of any loop. It's random, it's dynamic, it's real. If the player leaves the character alone for 3 seconds, a really short mob, the character is gonna take a new pose. It won't stand in its basic regular stand pose as anyone do. Each actor is gonna choose some of the some attitude, some behavior that he usually have, and this is some details that really brings a lot of detail on who is the character, what is he thinking about.
Another aspect of our job is to create facial animation, and thus to really give life to the character. It's a moment when we truly work with the actors, shooting facial mock-up with them in order to give life to the character's face, to make it talk and act in accordance with the situations.
Dad! Hey, take it easy, you're gonna knock me over. So this is your big day, huh?
Am I grown up now?
10 years old, that's not exactly grown up, but you're getting there.
It wasn't bravery. It was love.
That telling stories, this is probably one of the oldest human activities since language exists and writing exists. I mean, people tell stories and people like stories to be told.
Here's a quick spoiler alert, as I'm about to tell the story behind Heavy Rain. If you're not a fan of spoilers, please advance to the gameplay overview section, as seen on the timeline below. Let's dive into this. So much like Fahrenheit, there are a plethora of ways to have this story play out. But for this video, I will be giving you the best outcomes of the story and saving the other endings for my character analysis. Let's start. The game opens up with Ethan Mars, one of the protagonists, waking up and is prepared to celebrate his son Jason's birthday. Ethan spends time playing with both his sons, and just before the party starts, his other son Sean is heartbroken upstairs because his bird Merlin has just died. Sean, blaming himself and wishing he could bring Merlin back, is reassured by Ethan, who says, "There are some things which just have to happen, even if you don't want them to." Later, the Mars family is at the mall. Ethan, his wife Grace, and their 2 sons. At the mall, Ethan takes charge with Jason at Grace's request while she and Sean shop for shoes. During this brief moment, Jason wanders off. Ethan finds Jason talking to a clown and tells him not to wander off before buying him a red balloon. As Ethan pays, Jason disappears again. Alarmed, Ethan searches for Jason and runs into Grace, who is worried about the crowd. Ethan tells her Jason wandered off and instructs her to stay with Sean while he searches. Nearing the exit, Ethan sees Jason's balloon outside across the street. He calls out to Jason, who starts walking towards him. Ethan spots an oncoming car and tries to stop Jason. Ignoring or not hearing his father's warning, Jason charges forward. Ethan races to save Jason, grabbing him just as both are struck by the car. Grace arrives in time to see them hit. She drops to her knees, crying and shouting Jason's name repeatedly. While Sean looks in shock, the camera follows Jason's red balloon as it rises to the sky.
Shit!
The story picks up 2 years after Jason's death. Ethan and Grace have separated, and Ethan is struggling to keep his life on track while Sean has become distant and depressed. Ethan has joint custody of Sean and cares for him during the week. Their relationship is strained and uncomfortable, evident in their interactions at home. One day, Ethan receives a strange letter with no return address. He opens it and it reads, "When the parents came home from church, all the children were gone. They searched and called for them. They cried and begged, but it was to no avail. The children have never been seen again." Ethan gives it a little thought and puts the letter down. After putting Sean to bed, Ethan blacks out and wakes up in an unfamiliar street holding a small origami dog in his hand. Moving along, we are introduced to Scott Shelby, a private investigator researching the Origami Killer. Scott enters a rundown extended stay motel searching for Lauren Winter, a prostitute and the mother of Johnny Winter, a victim of the Origami Killer. He bribes the property manager to find out which room she's in. When Shelby knocks on Lauren's door, she assumes he is a customer and tells him to put his money on the table. As she begins to take off her robe, Shelby just stands there, prompting her to tell him to take off his clothes. Shelby explains that he's not a customer but a private investigator seeking information about Johnny's disappearance, hoping it will provide a clue to unmasking the Origami Killer. Lauren talks about her son and his death, but provides little useful information. As Scott leaves the building, he has an asthma attack, but manages to contain it with his inhaler. He then sees a man named Troy forcing his way into Lauren's apartment. Scott intervenes, defends Lauren, and leaves his card on the table in case she needs to contact him.
I'll see you again, asshole.
Are you alright?
Better than him, I guess. Who is he?
An ex-client who thinks he owns me. He was getting violent, and I told him I didn't want to see him anymore.
Well, you should be careful. He'll probably be back. Sorry about the mess.
Mr. Shelby?
Yeah.
Thanks.
The following morning, we're introduced to Norman Jayden, an FBI agent sent to help solve the Origami Killer case. Jayden arrives at a crime scene involving the newest victim, a 10-year-old boy named Jeremy Bowles. He meets Lieutenant Carter Blake, who comes off as a rude individual. Many of the investigators follow Blake's lead, creating an environment of hostility towards Jayden that is apparent in all of his interaction with the local police force. While investigating the crime scene, Jayden uses Ari, a pair of sunglasses and a glove that allows him to collect and analyze evidence almost instantly. He finds the evidence including blood, orchid pollen, tire tracks, and footprints. After both Jayden and Blake are content with their investigations, they head off to the police station. While Jayden was working at the crime scene, Ethan was at his therapist's office taking a few tests. Afterward, the psychologist tells Ethan that he must find a way to move on and reassures him that he is not responsible for Jason's death. Despite this, Ethan still blames himself. The psychologist then asks a few questions about Sean. After answering them, Ethan prepares to leave. The psychologist reminds him that he is lucky to have survived the accident. Ethan replies, "I don't feel lucky," and leaves. Later that day, Ethan and Sean spend an afternoon in the park, starting to build a new bond as father and son. As they prepare to leave, with rain approaching, Sean asks to ride the carousel. Ethan buys a ticket, but his vision begins to fade. He suffers similar symptoms to his previous blackout and wakes up 3 hours later on an unfamiliar street. Panicking, he frantically searches for Sean, returning to the park where he finds only Sean's backpack next to the carousel. Desperate, he runs home and searches everywhere, only to end up empty-handed. Ethan falls to his knees, realizing he's holding an origami figure. Heartbroken, he yells Sean's name and starts to cry. Back at the police station, Norman meets up with Captain Perry. He also encounters Perry's secretary Charlene and notices a watch fund for officers who get promoted. He donates some money to the fund and then is guided to his office. Norman is given a small, unkept office where he reviews the evidence he has collected via Ari. After removing his Ari glasses and specialized glove, Norman begins to shake and lose control of his body, experiencing severe withdrawal symptoms. It is revealed that Norman is severely addicted to tryptophan and is struggling to resist using the drug. He walks to the bathroom and washes his face, trying to calm himself down. While Norman is in the bathroom, Ethan is being questioned by Blake and Ash about the events surrounding Sean's disappearance. Norman joins in the questioning and inquiries about Ethan and Sean's relationship and personal lives. Ethan asks Blake if Sean's disappearance could be related to the Origami Killer, but Blake provides little comfort, saying it may be too early to tell. Ethan then speaks to a panicked Grace, doing very little to calm her fears.
Did they find something?
No, nothing yet, but they're gonna keep looking through the night.
Do they think it's the Origami Killer?
It's still too early to say, but it is a possibility.
What happened, Ethan? How could you lose Sean like that? You should never have taken your eyes off him. I mean, for God's sake, how hard is it to keep your eye on a child in the park? Why did you leave him, Ethan? Why? Wasn't it enough losing Jason? I'm sorry. It's not what I meant to say. I miss him so much.
Moving on, Detective Shelby goes to a small corner store and talks to the store's owner, Hassan, about his son Reza, another victim of the Origami Killer. Hassan refuses to discuss the circumstances surrounding his son's death no matter how Scott approaches the situation. Realizing that Hassan will not talk, Scott searches for an inhaler at the back of the store. At this point, a man named Andrew storms in and holds Hassan at gunpoint, demanding the money in the cash register. Scott either knocks out or reasons with Andrew to get him out of the shop. Grateful for Scott's bravery in saving him, Hassan informs Scott of what he knows and gives him a box filled with small origami figurines. He explains that he received the box after his son's disappearance, but was unable to save him. Scott accepts the box and walks out of the store.
Punk. Didn't give me any choice.
1,000 thank you, sir. I don't know what would have happened if you had not been here.
Well, this I didn't come by for nothing. Have a nice day.
When my boy, Reza, disappeared, I received a letter with a locker ticket inside. Inside the locker, I found this box. I do not understand what it means, but I think it must be a sort of message from the man who took my son from me.
Can I?
Please, take the box if it can be of any use to you at all. It did not help me to save Reza, but maybe it will help you find the other little boy. Mr. Shelby, I was beginning to think that there was no good to be found in this place. I can see now that I was wrong.
The following day at 2:44 a.m., we meet Madison Page, who wakes up from a bad dream, citing her insomnia. Madison tries to get back to sleep by doing various activities around her apartment. Soon, she finds the fridge door open and uneasily closes it. Suddenly, masked intruders break into her apartment attempting to murder her. Madison tries to call for help, escape, and fend off the intruders. Eventually, she is cornered and murdered, only to awaken from the nightmare, revealing that everything we experienced was just a dream.
Well,
3 hours later, we're back at Ethan's house, where he sits exhausted at his kitchen table, thinking about what could have happened to Sean. He reopens and rereads the mysterious letter from earlier. Saddened and confused by the letter's message, Ethan looks inside the envelope and finds a ticket to a train station luggage locker. Realizing he has no choice but to find what the locker holds, he also suspects he may be able to blame for Sean's disappearance and the other killings. He considers that his blackouts might be linked to these events. Avoiding the paparazzi crowd in front of his house, he heads to the train station. Ethan enters the station, revealing he has developed anyclophobia, a fear of crowds, since Jason's death. As he presses through the crowd, Ethan hallucinates, seeing the crowd freeze in place. Anyone Ethan touches collapses, and he sees what appears to be Jason Mars searching for him, replaying the day where they were separated. Desperately pushing through the crowd to catch up with Jason, Ethan questions his sanity. Overcome by the hallucination, he cowers in fear. When he recovers, he's in front of a locker room, reminding himself that Jason is dead. Ethan finds the correct locker and discovers a shoebox like the one Hassan gave Shelby. Ethan goes to a motel to check inside the box since his home is swarmed by paparazzi. In the motel, he opens the box and finds 5 numbered origami animals, a cell phone, a memory card with his name written on it, and a loaded gun. Realizing the Origami Killer has Sean, Ethan inserts the memory card into the phone. The card plays a video of Sean in a drain filling with rainwater. Calling desperately for help, the video ends with a message: "How far are you prepared to go to save someone you love?" It continues: 5 origami figures. Each figure is a trial. Each trial provides letters. The letters reveal an address. Ethan checks the first origami piece, which reads, "Are you prepared to show your courage to save your son?" and reveals an address. Grabbing the origami figure, the phone, and the gun, Ethan rushes out of the motel and heads for the first trial. While Ethan is checking the box, Norman is having a meeting with Captain Perry and Blake. During the meeting, Norman presents a profile of the Origami Killer and identifies a possible area where the killer may live. Throughout the presentation, Lieutenant Carter Blake makes several aggressive and derogatory comments, clearly finding Norman's approach a waste of time. Although much of the information is generic profiling of the killer's motives and modus operandi, it reveals one crucial new aspect: the victims always die when the rain level reaches 6 inches, give or take 10%. They likely drown in a well or drain with open access to the sky. This insight annoys Blake, who argues that analytical work is no substitute for working the streets. Captain Perry stops an infuriated Blake from starting a fight and asks Norman how long do they have before the next victim dies. Norman estimates they might have less than 72 hours.
Your vast experience hasn't prevented 8 victims from being murdered. Fucking asshole!
That's enough! You said it took 6 inches of rainfall before the victim died. How much time do we have left?
If the weather forecasts are right, less than 72 hours.
After the testosterone-fueled shouting match, Norman and Blake head to an apartment belonging to a man named Nathaniel. To their surprise, Nathaniel isn't home. Blake forces his way in despite Jaden's objections. The apartment is filled with crosses, Bibles, and lit candles. Blake dismisses Nathaniel as a God-fearing idiot and claims Nathaniel believes Blake is the Antichrist, sent to persecute him. While Blake and Jaden search the apartment, Nathaniel returns with groceries. Jaden questions him about one of the Origami Killer's victims, to which Nathan defensively replies, "As God is my witness, I haven't done anything wrong. I'm innocent." During the questioning, Blake starts to mock Nathaniel about the voices he's been hearing. Jaden notices that Nathaniel is terrified of Blake. Blake escalates the situation by taunting Nathaniel, asking if God told him to drown all those children. Nathaniel starts to crack under the pressure despite Jaden's attempts to intervene. Blake then physically assaults Nathaniel, pushing him too far, believing Blake is the son of Satan. Nathaniel pulls out a gun and demands Blake leave him alone. Jaden draws his weapon and holds Nathaniel at gunpoint. After a tense standoff, Norman manages to defuse the situation with his words, convincing Nathaniel to drop the gun. Blake then arrests Nathaniel.
Motherfucker! In the name of the Lord, I exorcise thee, Satan.
Okay, freak, the show's over. You're under arrest. Pretty damn cool under the circumstances. I would have just shot him.
A gun isn't the answer to every problem, Blake.
Maybe not, but most of the time it helps.
While Norman was arresting Nathaniel and Ethan was leaving the motel, Scott Shelby made his way to a trailer park to question Susan Bowles, the mother of Jeremy Bowles, the boy whose body Norman had discovered earlier. At Susan's home, Shelby hears a distressed baby crying, but receives no response when he knocks on the door. Deciding to investigate, he enters the kitchen and finds a deletion note from Susan. Further searching reveals Susan bleeding in the bathtub from a self-inflicted wrist wound. Shelby quickly removes her to a bed and bandages her wrists. Susan, weak but coherent, asks Shelby to care for her baby, Emily Bowles, who needs changing, feeding, burping, and rocking to sleep. Once Emily is settled, Shelby returns to Susan, who explains that she couldn't cope with the loss of Jeremy and the disappearance of her husband, who vanished the day after Jeremy went missing, leaving behind a non-working cell phone. Susan tells Shelby the phone isn't her husband's as she never seen it before and it doesn't work. She agrees to let Shelby take the phone for his investigation and promises to call her mother for help. With the phone in hand, Shelby leaves the trailer. A little later, after Shelby obtained the cell phone and left Susan's trailer, we return to Ethan, who was beginning his first trial. Inside one of the origami figures from the shoebox is an address and instructions. The address leads to Joe's garage, a parking lot. Ethan presents a pickup card to the mechanic there, who hands him the keys to a car. Ethan drives to the garage where he finds a GPS device in the car that directs him to his next destination and details his first trial. The trial requires him to drive against oncoming traffic on a busy highway for 5 miles and reach the destination within 5 minutes. Despite severe injuries and wrecking the car, Ethan successfully completes the trial. He receives the first set of random letters needed for a hangman game, which will help him decipher the location of his son. Moving on, we check back with Madison. Unable to sleep in her apartment, she decides to check into a motel, the same one where Ethan Mars is staying. Madison arrives at the motel, collects her room key from the lobby, and heads to her room. On her way, she notices Ethan leaning against the safety railing outside of his room. Concerned, she asks if he's okay, but Ethan collapses and asks for help to get into his room. While Ethan showers, Madison stays with him to ensure he doesn't pass out from his injuries. They introduce themselves, and Madison explains that her insomnia has driven her to stay in the motel. After they part ways, Ethan checks the shoebox again, finding a butterfly origami that directs him to his next trial at the old power plant. He then grabs his jacket and heads out. About an hour after Ethan has left, the story shifts back to Norman and Blank, who are preparing to confront another suspect, Miroslav Korda. The two officers sit in the car discussing past events and wait for Korda's arrival. When Korda finally shows up, Jaden and Blake exit the car and announce they are with the police. Panicked, Korda bolts, prompting a chase through a bustling food market. The pursuit ends in a meat locker, where Norman corners and arrests Korda after a brief but intense struggle.
This time it looks like we got our Origami Killer.
Later that night, at Scott Shelby's apartment, Lauren Winter arrives with a crucial piece of information about her son. She presents an envelope identical to the one Ethan received before Sean's disappearance. Lauren reveals that her son's father, Alan Winter, received a similar letter after Johnny went missing, and then vanished without a trace, just like Jeremy's father. Determined to assist Scott in his investigation, Lauren insists on joining him as a partner and refuses to give up the envelope otherwise. Scott agrees, and together they head to the Kramer mansion to question Gordy Kramer. Although Scott initially tries to convince Lauren to stay behind, she insists on accompanying him. At the mansion, Shelby and Lauren face the challenge of getting past two guards blocking a staircase leading to Gordy Kramer's private area. Scott talks to the two guards while Lauren stages a fake overdose to create a diversion. As the guards tend to her, Scott sneaks past him and confronts Gordy. During their encounter, Gordy jokingly claims to be the Origami Killer before his bodyguards attack Scott. Gordy issues a threatening warning to Shelby as he makes his exit.
I'd like to know exactly what happened to little Joseph Brown.
Beat it! You hear me? Get the hell out of here!
What do you want?
A witness saw little Joseph Brown get in the back of your limousine. That was the last time anybody ever saw him. Now, I know you've been arrested and interrogated until your father made a little phone call and the file was closed. I'd like to hear your version of the facts.
The kid was lost. I just offered to drive him home. The police arrived, I explained the misunderstanding, and I was released. End of story. Nothing to get excited about, right?
I don't know why, but your story just doesn't check out. You're giving me the crap now. Tell me something I can't believe.
Very well. I'm the Origami Killer. I get my victims into my car. I drown them in rainwater. Then I dump them on a wasteland with an origami figure in one hand and an orchid on their chest. I do that because I'm bored, Mr. Shelby. And it's a creative and entertaining way of having fun. Is that good enough for you? Or do you want more? This interview is over.
Get rid of this clown!
That same night, Ethan begins his second trial. He arrives at an abandoned power plant and gains entry by following the butterfly images painted on the building or squeezing through a hole in the fence next to his car. Inside, he discovers a hatch leading to a narrow tunnel just big enough for him to crawl through. At the tunnel's entrance, he finds a matchbox, lights a match to see better, and crawls into the darkness. As he progresses, the hatch closes behind him and he begins to doubt his decision. He pushes forward, only to cut his arm on a carpet of broken glass spread along the tunnel. After navigating the glass-filled tunnel, Ethan reaches a smaller tunnel and slides down it at a dangerous speed, ending up on a ledge above live electrical capacitors arranged in a grid. He must carefully navigate through these capacitors to reach the other side of the room, where he finds another chip with additional letters to complete the hangman puzzle. With the new letters in hand, Ethan takes the chip and leaves the power plant. That same night, Ethan makes his way back to the motel, but he is so badly injured that he can't even close the door properly. Madison, heading back to her room, notices that Ethan's door is ajar. Curiosity leads her to investigate, and she finds Ethan collapsed on the floor, severely hurt. Madison quickly gets him onto the bed and tends to his wounds, and a fever using supplies from the bathroom medicine cabinet. She stays by his side, waiting for him to regain consciousness. After about 3 hours, Ethan finally wakes up, and Madison engages him in a conversation about her past. They share some personal details before Madison decides to leave. Alone again, Ethan checks the shoebox and retrieves the lizard-shaped origami. The note inside instructs him to head to Marble Street for his next trial. Back at the police station, Corda is being interrogated. During the questioning, Corda explains that his reason for fleeing from Blake and Jaden was due to his fear of returning to prison for failing to report to his parole officer. As Corda speaks, Blake, Jaden, and Ash observe the interrogation from behind a one-way mirror. Ash informs Blake that Corda has an alibi for several of the murders, ruling him out as the killer. The phone rings and Ash answers it. He informs Blake that Grace Mars, Ethan's ex-wife, is at the precinct and wants to speak with him. Grace tells Blake and Jaden about a night from when she and Ethan were still married. She recounts how Ethan left late night and returned around 3 in the morning, speaking cryptically about drowning in the rain. She felt that Ethan's behavior was out of character and that he wasn't himself. Grace also mentions that there was news of a new victim of the Origami Killer the next morning. Tearfully, she pleads with Blake to find her son, Sean. Although she insists that the incident might not be connected to the murders, her statement ignites Blake's suspicion that Ethan might be the Origami Killer.
It was a few months back, the middle of the night. It was pouring down. Ethan came home completely drenched at about 3. I asked him where he'd been. He spoke about drowning, the rain. He didn't make any sense. There was something in his eyes, as if it wasn't really him. There may be no connection, but the next day there was that announcement about another victim of the Origami Killer. Find my son. I'm begging you.
Blake and Norman, following up on Grace's claims about Ethan's strange behavior, arrive at the office of Dr. Clarence Dupree, Ethan's psychologist. They begin their conversation professionally, with Blake and Jada introducing themselves and inquiring about Ethan's mental health. Initially, Dr. Dupree maintains a polite and professional demeanor, but as Blake pushes for details, citing Grace's concerns, Dupree cites a patient confidentiality and refuses to divulge any specifics about Ethan's condition. Blake's demeanor quickly shifts from polite to aggressive. He grows increasingly hostile, pressing Dupree for more information. When Dupree continues to refuse, Blake's frustration boils over. He throws Dupree over his desk and begins to physically assault him in a bid to force the information out. Under duress, Dupree finally reveals that Ethan has been troubled by a disturbing vision of drowning bodies. He then reluctantly retrieves a small origami figure from the desk drawer, explaining that it had fallen out of Ethan's pocket during a session a few weeks ago. With this new piece of evidence, Blake and Norman head out, with Blake on the phone reporting that Ethan Mars is the Origami Killer.
What's up with you, Norm? How you getting cold feet? You don't like to get your hands dirty, huh? I thought you wanted to save that kid. I want to save Sean Mars just as much as you do, but that doesn't give me the freedom to do what the hell I like, so you're gonna stop this shit right now.
I'll get you for this, Jaden. Don't worry. I will not forget.
Ethan Mars has had psychological problems since his first son died. Feels responsible for his death. A sort of morbid neurosis. He is haunted by visions of drowning bodies. A few weeks ago, after one of our usual sessions, I found this on the floor. It must have fallen out of his pocket.
Ash, I want you to assign every available man to finding Ethan Mars. I want a man outside his place day and night. Notify all agencies to start looking for him. I want you to keep an eye on the train stations, the airports, the bus terminals. I want every cop in the city on his ass, so that if he moves, we know about it. Yes, Ethan Mars is the Origami Killer.
The following morning, Scott Shelby meets Charles Kramer, Gordy's father, at a driving range. They engage in a conversation about Scott's ongoing investigation. Charles insists on his son's innocence and makes it clear that he's a powerful and influential man. He offers Scott a financial incentive to drop the investigation, essentially attempting to bribe him. Scott firmly rejects Charles's offer, emphasizing that he cannot be swayed or bought. Despite Charles's attempts to persuade him, Scott stands his ground. As he prepares to leave, Charles issues a stern warning for Scott to stay away from his son. Scott leaves the driving range, undentured and resolute in his pursuit of the truth.
I'm an influential man, Mr. Shelby, and I pay very well for loyalty. Are you trying to buy me? Let's just say I'm trying to show you where your interest lies. How much do you want to leave my son alone? I think you misunderstood me. I don't play that game. Don't go near my son, Mr. Shelby. If you do, you'll regret it. Have a nice day, Mr. Kramer.
That same morning, Ethan arrives at an empty apartment. The building's interior is charred and desolate, remnants of a recent fire evident everywhere. As Ethan explores, he notices several porcelain lizards scattered across the floor. their pristine appearance starkly contrasting with the bird's surroundings. Curious, Ethan shakes one of the lizards and hears a rattling sound. He breaks it open to find a key inside. Ethan uses the key to unlock a door at the end of the hallway, which bears a lizard painting on it. Inside the room, he discovers a table with a computer-like device which will guide him through the next challenge. The device instructs Ethan to sever the tip of one of his fingers to obtain additional letters for the Hangman game. Despite the excruciating pain, Ethan performs the task and afterward takes a moment to recover from the agony. He watches another video of Sean and more letters of the Hangman being revealed. Shortly after Ethan cuts off his finger, Madison arrives and warns him that the police are closing in on the building. With officers already outside and preparing to storm the apartment, Madison helps Ethan, still racked with pain, escape through the back exit. They make their way to a dimly lit alleyway. As they try to flee, a police officer spots them and notifies Blake and Norman of their location. The two detectives rush outside to pursue Madison and Ethan. The chase leads them to the subway. Ethan, once again crippled by the ankylophobia, struggles to keep his composure in the crowded environment. Madison supports him through the panic, and they manage to evade capture by boarding a passing train. Back at the motel, Ethan watches the news report naming him as a suspect in the Origami Killer case. Stunned and disoriented, he grapples with the gravity of the situation. Madison returns to the room, and after a tense conversation about her decision to follow him and his reluctance to let her in, she eventually leaves. Alone, Ethan opens the next origami figure, a shark. The message inside reads, "Are you prepared to kill someone to save your son?" It includes an address. Determined, Ethan grabs a gun from the box and heads out to the specified location. Norman Jaden is alone in his hotel room, seated at the piano, lost in thought about the case. As he plays, a butler arrives and offers him a glass of vodka. The two engage in a conversation about the investigation. Norman confides in the butler that he has doubts about Ethan being the Origami Killer, believing that the evidence doesn't add up. The butler advises Norman to review all the evidence he has collected and warns him about the dangers of his tryptophan addiction. The butler's worries about the negative effects of the drug and its potential to endanger his life weigh heavy on Norman. After the butler leaves, Norman turns attention to his files and notices a new addition, a videotape showing the day Sean Mars was kidnapped. He watches the tape carefully and spots a blue Chevy. Running the license plate through his system, Norman identifies a new person of interest named Mad Jack. He takes off his Ari glasses. Norman is hit with severe tryptophan withdrawal symptoms. He begins to experience intense hallucinations, flipping between the Ari world and reality. In a desperate attempt to clear his mind and resist the urge to use the drug, Norman heads to the bathroom and takes a cold shower. It's 10 a.m., and Scott Shelby and Lauren Winter are still diligently working on the case. Their next stop is an antique repair shop run by Manfred, an old friend of Shelby's. The goal is to track down the killer by identifying the typewriter used to print the address on the envelope sent to Alan Winter. Upon arrival, Manfred is pleasantly surprised to see Shelby. The two old friends share a drink and catch up briefly before getting down to business. Shelby and Lauren explain the situation, and Manfred listens attentively. After some discussion, Manfred reveals that the typewriter used by the Origami Killer is a Royal 5, a model manufactured between 1907 and 1924. Manfred mentions that he has purchased the entire stock of spare parts for the Royal 5, making him the sole repairman for that model. He offers to retrieve a list of his Royal 5 customers, which could potentially lead to the killer. As Manfred heads to the back room to find the list, Shelby and Lauren wait in the main area. Suddenly they hear a commotion. Rushing to the back room, they find Manfred has been murdered by the Origami Killer. Realizing the urgency of the situation, Shelby asks quickly to remove any fingerprints or evidence that could link Lauren or himself to Manfred's death before the police and paramedics arrive.
Scott? Oh my god.
What are you doing?
I'm calling the police.
The killer has already called the police. I think he wants us to be his scapegoats. We gotta get the hell out of here.
What do you mean? We have nothing to do with his death. We were just here when it happened.
Look, we're running out of time to find Sean Mars. The last thing we need is 24 hours in a police station explaining this whole thing.
Well, so what do we do?
Watch the front door. I'll get rid of our fingerprints from everything we touched since we came in. We better work fast. The police are going to be here any minute.
Ethan arrives at the home of a drug dealer named Brad Silver, determined to complete his fourth trial. As he knocks on the door, Brad answers, only to find Ethan pointing a gun directly at him. In a tense confrontation, Brad grabs a shotgun and the two engage in a dangerous shooting match throughout the house. Brad, running low on ammunition, eventually concedes defeat. He pleads for his life, desperately mentioning his children in his bid for mercy. Ethan hesitates, torn between his desire to see his son again and the life he's about to take. In a moment of grim resolve, Ethan turns away and pulls the trigger, killing Brad. After a fatal shot, Ethan takes a photograph of Brad's lifeless body and, overwhelmed by the weight of his actions, vomits on the floor. While he's on his knees, he receives a message indicating that the crucial chip is hidden in the gun. Ethan retrieves the chip and loads it, and views another video of Sean. The video provides additional letters to complete the hangman puzzle. With the new information in hand, Ethan leaves the house, leaving Brad's body behind.
Hold it, man. I give you whatever you want. Got dope? I got cash? You want some dope? Please. Please don't kill me, man. I got children. These are my girls, see? This one's Sarah. And the little one, that's Cindy. Please, man. I want to see them again. Please, please don't shoot. I'm a father too, but I have no choice.
Later that day, Madison follows up on a lead regarding Adrian Baker, the former surgeon and illegal drug prescriber who owned the apartment building where Ethan performed his gruesome trial. Madison approaches Baker under the pretense of buying betropin for her insomnia. Hoping to gain his trust, Adrian is eager to celebrate the new client, offers Madison a toast with champagne. If Madison chooses to drink, she is drugged and loses consciousness. If she refuses the drink while investigating the house, she gets struck in the head with a baseball bat by Adrian. Regardless of how she's incapacitated, Madison wakes up restrained in a makeshift surgery table in a dark, grimy room. Adrian Baker stands over her, surrounded with bloody surgical instruments, and caresses her menacingly. He prepares to use a cordless drill on her, but is interrupted by the sound of the doorbell. Seizing the opportunity, Madison manages to free herself from the restraints. A desperate fight ensues between her and Adrian. In the struggle, Madison kills Adrian in self-defense. After the confrontation, she finds a business card for the Blue Lagoon Club in Adrian's possession. On the back of the card is the name Paco, indicating a potential lead. While Madison was struggling for her life, Norman and Jaden decide to follow up on a lead regarding Mad Jack. Jaden arrives at Mad Jack's junkyard, which is suspected of being linked to the Origami Killer. Jack, known for selling repainted 1983 Chevrolet Malibus, is uncooperative and evasive. Norman begins investigating the junkyard's garage and uncovers evidence suggesting that Jack is involved in more serious crimes than just stolen cars. Among the clues, Norman finds orchid pollen, a significant piece of evidence linking the place to the Origami Killer. As Norman is about to leave, Mad Jack returns and confronts him. A tense fight ensues between Norman and Jack. Despite the danger, Norman manages to overpower Jack and restrains him. During his interrogation, Jack reveals crucial information about a man named Paco, who was associated with the Blue Lagoon Club. As Norman reads Jack his Miranda rights, he experiences severe tryptophan withdrawal symptoms. To steady himself, Norman uses some of the drug to alleviate his symptoms before finalizing Jack's arrest.
Turn around.
At Scott Shelby's apartment, Lauren Winter inquires if Scott thinks the Origami Killer could have murdered Manfred. Shelby agrees, noting it makes sense. When Lauren asks if he suspects Gordy Kramer, Scott responds that Gordy or one of his men could be the killer due to Gordy's resources and sinister demeanor. Despite Gordy being just a suspect, Scott believes he seems the most guilty. Lauren then shifts the conversation to the files on Shelby's coffee table. Scott explained that he's been working on the case for a couple of years and the papers are lists of subscribers to Origami magazines. Lauren suggests that the killer might be one of the subscribers, though Scott points out that the list contains over 500 names. Claiming hunger, Lauren asks if Shelby has anything to eat. Scott offers to make some scrambled eggs and Lauren accepts, heading off to take a shower. When she returns, she's wearing Shelby's bathrobe and says, "I took the liberty of borrowing your bathrobe." Shelby comments that it looks better on her. As she eats, Lauren and Scott brainstorm ways to narrow down the list of suspects. They decide to compare Manfred's list of clients with the subscription list. This process reveals only one name in common on both lists: John Shepard, a boy who died over 30 years ago at the age of 10. They resolve to check the gravesite. At the grave, Shelby and Lauren discover a fresh origami figure and flowers left on the grave. A nearby gravedigger starts recounting the tragic story of John Shepard. A flashback begins, depicting John and his twin brother being thrown out of their trailer home by their drunken father. The boys are left outside a cold, rainy day. John, unfazed by the weather, leads a race through unfinished construction site. Despite his brother's concerns, John happily continues the race and they eventually play hide and seek. John's brother finds him in a precarious situation, half submerged in a large broken pipe filled with fast-moving water. Despite his efforts to help, John's brother can't free him and runs to get help. John, struggling to hold on, ultimately succumbs to the water. Returning to the present, the gravedigger concludes the story. Lauren suggests that John's brother could be the killer. The gravedigger reveals that John's brother was adopted and given a new name after being separated from his parents. As Shelby and Lauren leave the cemetery, they spot Charles Kramer arriving with flowers for John's grave.
Wait.
What's the matter?
That man over there.
Yeah?
It's Charles Kramer.
Gordy's father? What's he doing here?
He's putting flowers on John Shepard's grave.
That night, Madison arrives at the Blue Lagoon determined to extract information from Paco. Upon entering the club, she finds Paco, but a bouncer informs her that Paco doesn't want to be disturbed. Undentured, Madison decides to make a more striking impression. She adjusts her outfit and dances proactively near Paco's table, capturing his attention. Intrigued, Paco invites Madison upstairs to his private office. Once inside, Paco demands that Madison perform a striptease for him. While he is distracted by the performance, Madison seizes the opportunity. She manages to knock him out, quickly ties him up, and holds him at gunpoint. Under the pressure, Paco initially denies any connection to the Marble Street apartment. However, Madison relentlessly questions him, eventually forcing him to reveal that the apartment is rented by a man named John Shepard. With this crucial information, Madison decides to leave the club, leaving Paco bound and incapacitated. As Madison exits the Blue Lagoon with the crucial information about John Shepard, Norman Jayden arrives at the club. Using his badge, he persuades the bouncer to let him through and heads straight up to Paco's office. Upon reaching the office, Norman discovers Paco's lifeless body. He dons his Ari glasses to begin recording evidence when suddenly the Origami Killer attacks him. A fierce fight ensues, but the killer manages to escape before Norman can apprehend him. Frustrated but determined, Norman goes outside to question the bouncer about what happened. The bouncer reveals the name John, which sparks a new lead for Norman. Returning to the office, Norman meticulously investigates the crime scene, uncovering several important clues: Madison's DNA, orchid pheromones, and 2 receipts from a gas station. With these new findings, Norman collects his evidence and prepares to continue his investigation. At the motel, Madison arrives and finds Ethan, who is visibly shaken by his recent actions. Ethan opens up about his distress from killing Brad, leading to an intimate moment between them. They sleep together, but when Ethan wakes up, he discovers a cell phone and a notepad in Madison's coat pocket. Upon examining them, he realizes Madison is a journalist. Feeling betrayed, Ethan confronts Madison, who apologizes for her deception. Despite her apology, Ethan decides to forgive her. Madison dresses and leaves the room, only to notice that the police are starting to surround the motel. She quickly calls Ethan from the lobby phone to warn him. Ethan, now aware of the imminent danger, makes a hasty escape. In a dramatic chase, he ends up cornered on a roof. Desperate, he leaps off and enters a taxi cab, which he commandeers to evade capture.
It's over. On your knees, hands behind your head. Easy, pal. Nowhere to go. You're surrounded. Holy fuck!
While Ethan is on the run, Scott Shelby returns to his apartment, only to find it broken into. Inside, he discovers Charles Kramer and his bodyguards. Kramer warns Shelby that he had been told to stop investigating his son, and the bodyguards knock Shelby and Lauren out. When Shelby regains consciousness, he finds himself in a car which has been dumped into a lake. He is tied to the steering wheel but manages to free himself and rescue Lauren. They swim to safety, and Shelby, furious, vows to settle the scores. Shelby storms Kramer's house with intense determination, driving his car into the building and taking out the bodyguards in a dramatic action sequence. He makes his way to Charles Kramer's office, where Charles admits that Gordy Kramer killed Joseph Brown as a copycat act for the thrill. Charles claims Gordy is not the Origami Killer and is genuinely remorseful. During the confrontation, Charles has a heart attack, leaving Scott with the choice to save him or not. After making the decision, Shelby leaves.
Stop! Stop! I beg you. I'll tell you everything. Gordy always wanted his fun, you know. He wanted to be like the Origami Killer. He kidnapped that kid and he held him under the water for a little too long. It was an accident. An unfortunate accident. He just wanted to play. He told me everything. He was crying. He was so sorry for what had happened. Whatever he did, Gordy is my son. No one will miss him.
What?
That boy, Gordy killed. No one will miss him. Just street trash, like so many others.
Oh, you disgusting pile of shit. And what about John Shepard? Why did you put flowers on his grave?
I owned the construction site where he died. I never forgot. I've been putting flowers on his grave for 30 years.
John had a twin brother. What happened to him?
I don't know. He was adopted, I think. His mother should know. Her name is Anne. Anne Shepard. My heart! My heart! Quickly! I need my pills. In that drawer. There.
On Friday morning, Madison visits Ann Shepard, John's mother who is in a hospital geriatrics ward, suffering from Alzheimer's. Madison learns from a nurse that certain triggers can help stimulate Ann's memory. She makes an origami figure of a dog, which helps Ann recall all the dog origami figures were named Max. As Ann is in her bed, she asks Madison to come closer and reveals the name of John's twin brother. Madison is stunned by this revelation and leaves the hospital, processing the new information.
Come closer.
That night, Ethan arrives at his final trial. He enters a red hallway that leads to an elegant white room adorned with mirrors and cameras. In the room, he finds a table with a vial of poison and a stopwatch, and a media player. Ethan is presented with the choice to drink the vial of poison, which will kill him in 60 minutes, but allow him enough time to find and say goodbye to his son. Ethan chooses to drink the poison, receiving the final set of letters to lead him to the address 852 Theodore Roosevelt Road.
The last letters have been sent to your phone.
I did what I had to, Sean.
Your dad's coming to save you.
Simultaneously, while Ethan is undergoing his final trial, Norman Jayden, frustrated and disillusioned, grapples with the overwhelming pressure of the investigation. Despite his best efforts, he feels the identity of the Origami Killer remains elusive and is infuriated by the incompetence and political maneuvering within a local police department. With Sean Mars' life hanging in the thread and Ethan Mars wrongfully accused, Jayden is desperate to find the truth. Carter Blake arrives in Jayden's office and informs him that it's over. The department is confident that Ethan is the killer and Jayden is being pulled off the case. Jayden protests, arguing that he has no evidence to prove Ethan's guilt and insists that the investigation is far from finished. Blake dismisses Jayden's concerns, maintaining that Ethan's guilt is a closed case and tells him to pack up and F off. Jayden is incensed by Blake's arrogance and disregard and calls him an unbalanced, psychopathic a-hole. Blake, unfazed, takes this as a compliment and advises Jayden to have a nice trip back to Washington. As Jayden reviews the video footage from his art glasses, he spots a crucial detail. The killer wears a gold watch, similar to those given to lieutenants in the police department. Piecing together the geodata, Jayden finally identifies the killer's true identity. He rushes to the door with a newfound urgency. Blake, noticing Jayden's sudden departure, decides to follow him with the police.
A cop. There's only one cop in that geoprofiling zone. Gotcha. He owns a warehouse on the docks. If I'm wrong, Sean Mars is dead.
Are you sure it's the right car? At the docks. Call the SWAT team. Oh, and I'll need a chopper. Today? Of course I'll need it today, you fucking imbecile.
As tensions rise, Shelby decides it's too dangerous for Lauren Winters to stay by his side. He convinces her to stay with her mother for safety. Lauren is insistent on knowing who the killer is, but Scott promises to reveal everything once the case is resolved. They share a heartfelt goodbye kiss, showcasing Scott's growing affection for Lauren. Flashback, the scene shifts to the tragic day John Shepard drowned. John's twin brother, desperate for help, runs home to their abusive father. The father, deeply intoxicated, refuses to assist and harshly tells the boy that John's death means one less greedy mouth to feed. Heartbroken, the boy returns to John, who was barely holding in the water. John weakly tells his brother, "Don't forget about me, Scotty," revealing the name of his twin brother. The truth becomes clear. Scott Shelby is the Origami Killer. Back in the present, Shelby sits alone in his office, reflecting on his past with tearful expressions. Overwhelmed by his memories and guilt, he starts a fire in a trash can. He throws various incriminating items into the flames. The phone from Susan Bowles, the envelope from Lauren, the box from Hassan, and the address book he stole from Paco, a list of clients from Manfred, and a photo of himself and John. As the items burn, the pieces of the puzzle fall into place, revealing the full scope of Scott's actions and motivations. Madison, now aware of Shelby's true identity as the Origami Killer, arrives at the apartment. She skillfully picks the lock and begins her investigation. While searching the apartment, she finds a wastebasket full of burned evidence and a closet containing a police officer's uniform. She realizes that Shelby used this uniform to gain the trust of his victims. Further exploration reveals hidden workroom behind a false wall in the closet. Inside, Madison discovers the orchards associated with the Origami Killer's victims and the typewriter used for the letters for the victims' families. She also finds a laptop secured with the password Max, the name the Shepherd Boys used for their origami dogs. Just as Madison begins to piece together the evidence, Shelby arrives. He locks her in the secret room and sets the apartment on fire, leaving a propane tank on his desk to explode. Madison must now escape the secret room before the smoke overcomes her. She manages to break free. She finds herself in Shelby's burning bathroom. The apartment is rapidly engulfed into flames. To survive the impending explosion caused by the propane tank, Madison has two options: jump from the kitchen window to a neighboring building, or hide in the refrigerator to avoid a blast. As she successfully escapes, Madison calls either Ethan or Jaden to inform them of Sean's location, depending on who she can reach in that time.
I know where Sean is. I've got to tell Ethan.
At the warehouse, Ethan finally reaches Sean, but his moment of relief is short-lived as Scott Shelby appears, revealing the chilling motivations behind his crimes. Shelby explains that he was inspired by Ethan's relentless efforts to save Jason, seeing in him a dedication and love he himself lacked from his own father. As Ethan struggles to break open the lock to free Sean, Scott raises his gun prepared to shoot him. However, Jaden intervenes by tackling Shelby, leading to a fierce fight. The confrontation escalates with Jaden pursuing Shelby across a conveyor belt. Ultimately, Scott falls to a grinder and meets his demise. With Scott defeated, Ethan manages to free Sean from the well and successfully revives him. Just as they're about to leave, Madison arrives at the warehouse. Despite evading the police who refuse to believe her evidence proving Ethan's innocence, she joins Ethan and Sean. Together, Ethan, Sean, and Madison escape the warehouse unharmed. Norman Jaden, having played a crucial role in stopping the killer, is recognized as a hero for his efforts. From here, the true ending of the game is shown, although the game can have multiple outcomes that I will explore in my analysis portion of the video. In the canonical ending, Ethan, Madison, and Sean move into a new home, symbolizing their fresh start and newfound family bond. Ethan and Madison share a kiss, and they begin their new life together. Norman Jayden, now promoted, appears on the TV talk shows to discuss his success in apprehending the Origami Killer. In a poignant moment, he is shown in the bathroom holding a vial of trypticane before flushing it down the toilet, signifying his attempt to move past his addiction. However, as he returns to work with Ari in his new office, the lingering effects of his drug use manifest into hallucinatory tanks across his desk. Meanwhile, Lauren Winter, having survived, is depicted in the cemetery where she mourns over Scott Shelby's grave, expressing her anger and betrayal by spitting on it. This final scene wraps up the game's narratives and brings the story to a close.
There was general relief this morning when the police announced that they had found Sean Mars alive more than 4 days after his disappearance. Mars had been imprisoned in a well by the man known as the Origami Killer. The successful resolution of this case was made possible only by the bravery of Ethan Mars, who the police believed at one point to be the killer. It is no doubt due to his great courage and tenacity that he succeeded in foiling the plans of the Origami Killer. The police commissioner presented him with an official apology today. On main headline today, it is reported that the police have identified the man thought to be the Origami Killer. Scott Shelby, 48, is a former police lieutenant who claimed to be a private eye hired by the families of the killer's victims. Shelby was killed during a massive police operation, but further details have not yet been released to the public.
Let's just say a friend of a friend let me jump in line. If we like it, it's ours.
Hey, Dad! I think I found my room!
Well, what do you think?
It's perfect, Ethan. We'll be able to forget what happened. We'll lead a normal life. And one day, it'll all just seem like a bad dream. We've earned the right to be happy now, Ethan. All three of us.
Our guest today is on the cover of Today's World magazine this week and has been hailed by the whole nation as a new hero for our times. Astonishingly, he almost single-handedly ended the sinister series of killings by the man known as the Origami Killer and saved the life of young Sean Mars. His determination, courage, and intelligence have won our admiration. Norman Jayden, good evening.
killed my son, Scott. Were you thinking about that when you held me in your arms? I don't know why you did all this. Nothing can justify it anyway. I feel nothing but contempt for you. Nothing but contempt.
Heavy Rain once again puts the power of choice in the player's hands, but this time the stakes are higher than ever. If we compare it to Fahrenheit, which started strong but then got criticized for its convoluted plot, Heavy Rain does a much better job at keeping the narrative grounded and consistent. It's a realistic, emotionally driven story about loss, guilt, and redemption that keeps you engaged from start to finish. One thing that makes Heavy Rain stand out is its multiple endings based on the player's decisions. This not only boosts replayability, but also deepens your personal investment in the story. The themes of paternal love, fear, and desperation are really brought to light, though both in the narrative and gameplay, making it a truly emotionally engaging experience. Take the second chapter for instance, when Jason dies. It's a gut-wrenching moment that leaves the audience in shock. You hear the mothers cry, you see Sean's stunned face. It starts the game on such a high emotional note. From there, the story just gets more noirish and gritty. Throughout the game, you're faced with tough decisions that test your morals on how far you're willing to go to save someone you love. One of the most intense moments is the Lizard trial, where Ethan has to cut off his own finger to prove his love for Sean and get a clue to his whereabouts. The game really makes you think about how far you go to save someone you care about. Then there are the darker endings, like when Ethan doesn't save Sean and ends up taking his own life. It's dark, but keeps you emotionally hooked. It's not just about playing with your emotions. The game also plays with the character's emotions. Look at Lauren and how Shelby hides his true identity from her. She starts falling for the man who killed her son, and then by the end, she's spitting on his grave. It shows just how deeply her emotions were manipulated. Heavy Rain uses emotions to drive the story, much like some of the best movies out there. Think about Avengers Infinity War, when all the superheroes got snapped away. It shocked audiences and played with their emotions. Heavy Rain aims to do the exact same, blending game and film concepts to create a deeply emotional experience. One aspect that really caught my attention to Heavy Rain is how the Origami Killer uses letters and origami figurines. Early in the game, Ethan receives a chilling letter that reads, "When the parents came home from church, all the children were gone. They searched and called for them. They cried and begged, but it was to no avail. The children have never been seen again." This letter likely references the legend of the Pied Piper of Hamelin, where a man first lures rats into their depths and then leads the town's children into a cave never to be seen again. This foreshadows the Origami Killer's intentions. Throughout the game, the Origami Killer uses various origami figurines, each with its own symbolic meaning. Let's break down these figurines and their associated trials. The first trial involves a bear, where Ethan must drive against traffic. Bears are generally shy and easily frightened, but become fiercely protective of their cubs if they are threatened. This mirrors Ethan's aggressive determination to save his son, Sean. The bear symbolizes courage, a quality Ethan must possess to navigate this perilous trial. In the second trial, Ethan maneuvers through an electrical grid. The butterfly symbolizes fragility and the delicate nature of light. Butterflies are often seen as souls of the dead passing into heaven, paralleling Ethan's journey to save Sean. Ethan's task to crawl through the narrow tunnel reflects the butterfly's ability to navigate tight spaces and move towards light. The third trial requires Ethan to cut off a finger, with one of the origami figures being a lizard. Some lizards can lose and regrow their limbs, symbolizing sacrifice and survival. This trial, named the Lizard, highlights the extreme lengths Ethan must go in order to save his son. In the fourth trial, Ethan must take down a drug dealer. Sharks are seen as powerful, violent predators at the top of the food chain. This trial symbolizes Ethan's strength and ruthlessness when it comes to protecting Sean. The final trial involves Ethan drinking poison, with the origami figure being a rat. Historically, rats are seen as carriers of disease, linking them to poison Ethan must ingest. The room where this trial takes place symbolizes the spread of disease and the battle between contamination and cleanliness. Additionally, rats' resilience to poison may hint at Ethan's potential survival, despite the lethal challenge. The use of letters in the origami figures by the Origami Killer adds the deep symbolic layers to Heavy Rain. Each figure represents a specific trial that tests Ethan's courage, resilience, and determination to save his son. These elements not only enhance the narrative, but also immerse players in the psychological and emotional journey of the characters. Speaking of the characters, let's talk about them. Starting with the main protagonist, Ethan Mars. Ethan's name means firm, strong, enduring, and well-lived, while his last name Mars is associated with the Roman god of war. For a moment, let's consider that Ethan Mars could be a representation of David Cage, the game's director. Cage once told a story about losing his son Quentin at a local mall for 5 minutes, describing it as the longest 5 minutes of his life. He managed to stretch that 5-minute experience into a game that lasts over 5 hours. Just as Cage was driven by his role as a father, so was Ethan. Ethan is introduced to players as a successful architect with a seemingly perfect life, including a loving wife and 2 sons, Jason and Sean. This idyllic existence is shattered when Jason is killed in a car accident, leaving Ethan deeply traumatized and leading to the breakdown of his marriage. 2 years later, Ethan is a shadow of his former self, struggling with depression and guilt. He experiences unexplained blackouts and wake-ups with origami figures in his hand. These blackouts serve as a red herring, making players question if Ethan could be the Origami Killer, adding to a psychological burden and the player's empathy for his plight. Earlier, I mentioned the game's multiple paths and the power of choice with true consequences. The darkest outcomes are seen in Ethan's endings if Sean meets a grim fate. In such cases, Ethan decides to end his own life. In the helpless ending where Ethan is framed as a killer, the game emphasizes themes of injustice, the fallibility of the justice system, the devastating consequences of false accusations, and the psychological toll of loss and guilt. This represents the complete destruction of Ethan's character. He lost everything: his freedom, his son, his reputation, and finally his will to live. It shows how the acclimation of trauma, injustice, and loss can break even the strongest individuals. For players, knowing Ethan is innocent, it creates a sense of helplessness and frustration, mirroring Ethan's own feelings. Now let's talk about Origami Blues. In this ending, we see Ethan Mars in a motel room, deeply depressed over the death of his son Sean. Tortured by guilt and sadness and surrounded by dozens of origami figures, Ethan takes his own life using a gun from the shark tribe. This really highlights the severe impact of mental health issues like depression and PTSD, which Ethan has been struggling with throughout the game. The origami figures scattered in the room symbolize Ethan's guilt and the constant reminder of his perceived failures. They're associated with these trials set by the Origami Killer, each representing a step in his desperate attempt to save Sean. The gun, which was initially part of the trial to prove his love for Sean, ironically becomes by the means of which he ends his own life. This highlights the tragic irony of the situation. This ending is one of the most tragic and emotionally charged outcomes in Heavy Rain. It underscores the game's exploration of deep emotional and psychological themes, such as guilt, loss, and mental health. Ethan's journey is marked by immense suffering and futile attempts at redemption, culminates in a heartbreaking conclusion that leaves a lasting impact on the player. Another ending for Ethan that is the darkest ending is the Tears in the Rain ending. In this one, Ethan and Madison stand over Sean's gravestone with Ethan visibly upset. Madison talks about moving away to a place where it never rains so they both can start a new life, even asking him to give her a child. But Ethan can't get past the guilt of being unable to save or protect his sons. He asks Madison for a moment alone, and as she walks back to the car, Ethan pulls out a gun. Madison cries as he shoots himself, and the screen fades away with Madison crying over his body. This represents Ethan's ultimate failure as a father. Despite all his efforts and sacrifices through the game, he was unable to save his son. This compounds the guilt he already carries from losing Jason early in the story. His overwhelming guilt and grief show how deeply the loss of his sons has affected him. It highlights that, for some, the weight of such tragedy is too much to bear. This is the ultimate expression of Ethan's despair and his inability to forgive himself. It's a tragic end to his character arc, showing that, despite surviving the ordeal, he couldn't survive the emotional aftermath. This ending emphasizes themes of grief, guilt, and the long-lasting impact of trauma, and the difficulty of moving on after a profound loss. It's a stark reminder that sometimes even love and the prospect of a new future aren't enough to overcome past tragedies. The ending leaves players with a sense of helplessness and sorrow, underscoring the game's exploration of the human capacity for both resilience and despair.
We'll go away from here, Ethan. Somewhere where it never rains. We'll start a new life. You'll get a job as an architect, and I'll work for the local newspaper. And we'll rebuild our life. And we'll finally forget.
How can I forget that my 2 sons died because of me? I loved them more than anything in the world. But I couldn't protect them.
I want you to give me a child. A little boy with your eyes. And we'll watch him grow up together, and we'll be happy. We'll get through this, Ethan. Life has to go on. I'll be there to help you. We'll get through this nightmare together. I love you, Ethan.
Just give me a few more minutes, Madison. I'll catch up.
I'll wait for you in the car.
An ending that's dark but not as harsh as Tears in the Rain is Ethan's grave ending. In this ending, Sean Mars is seen crying over his father's grave. Grace, his mother, walks solemnly to Sean and tells him to leave. They leave hand in hand, but Sean looks back towards the grave one last time. If Madison is alive, she is seen leaning against a tree, upset and saddened. If Scott Shelby survives, he appears at the end, watching the two with a mix of remorse and happiness. Sean's tears symbolize a profound grief and loss that he feels over the death of his father, Ethan Mars. Grace stepping in to confront Sean and guide him away from the person signifies her role as the remaining parent. She must now bear the responsibility of raising Sean alone. Madison's presence shows that she too is deeply affected by Ethan's death. Her sadness reflects the bond which formed with Ethan and the potential future they could have had together. While Scott Shelby's appearance shows mixed emotions of remorse and happiness are complex, his remorse stems from his actions as an origami killer, while his happiness comes from seeing a father who's willing to do anything to save his son, something Scott longed for in his own life. This ending is a poignant and emotionally charged conclusion to Heavy Rain. It encapsulates the themes of grief, loss, and the enduring impact of paternal love. Each character's reaction to Ethan's death adds depth to the narrative, making it a powerful and memorable conclusion to the game's story.
Come on, Sean. We've got to go now.
Not all endings are bad. There are some happy ones where we see Ethan smiling again, like the one we mentioned in the narrative section where Ethan and Madison live happily ever after. There's even a happy ending if there's no romance between Ethan and Madison. In this ending, Ethan takes Sean to a new condominium and asks him if he likes it. Sean looks around and finds the perfect place for his room and tells Ethan they will be together forever. Sean then playfully teases Ethan, who responds by chasing his son with his arms outstretched like an airplane wings. The new condominium symbolizes a fresh start for Ethan and Sean. After all the traumatic events they've endured, moving to a new place represents a chance to rebuild their lives and create new, positive memories. Sean's excitement about finding the perfect place for his room highlights his childlike innocence and the ability to find joy even after experiencing trauma. This ending is one of the more uplifting and hopeful conclusions in Heavy Rain. It shows that despite trauma and challenges, Ethan and Sean can find a new beginning and rebuild their lives. The themes of resilience, recovery, and the enduring bond between father and son are central to this ending, making it a powerful and emotionally satisfying conclusion to their story.
Is this where we're going to live now?
Only if you really, really want to. Or we can keep on looking until we find something you like.
It doesn't matter where we live, as long as we're together.
I will never let anyone or anything separate us again. We're stuck with each other, kiddo. Like glue.
Can I trust what my room is?
Sure thing, champ.
All right, then I think we can stay here.
The last of Ethan's endings that really hits home with his character development is the innocent ending. In this one, Ethan is proven innocent and gets released from his holding cell. Sean, alive and well, surprises Ethan at the police station. Grace apologizes for her actions and leaves Ethan to reunite with his son, who he promises to never leave again. Ethan being free from his holding cell symbolizes his release from all the psychological and emotional burdens he's been carrying. It remarks the end of his suffering and the beginning of a new chapter. Sean's return restores the family unit, which has been shattered by all the traumatic events. It highlights the enduring bond between father and son, What really stands out in this ending is Grace's apology. It signifies her acknowledgement of the mistakes and misunderstandings that led to Ethan's wrongful imprisonment. It shows her willingness to take responsibility and seek forgiveness. Sean asking Ethan to promise to never leave him again underscores the deep emotional bond between them. It reflects Sean's need for security and reassurance after everything they've been through. This ending is one of the most positive and uplifting conclusions to Heavy Rain. It encapsulates the theme of justice, redemption, family, and hope. Ethan's vindication, the reunion with Sean, and Grace's apology provide a sense of closure and promise of a brighter future. The emotional hearing and reaffirmation of the father-son bond make this ending a more powerful, satisfying conclusion to the game's narrative.
You're free to go.
Dad!
Sean has been waiting to see you for weeks. I thought you might like him to be here as soon as you got out. Ethan, I'm sorry.
Promise you'll never leave me again, Dad.
I promise, son. I never will again.
Now that we covered Ethan, let's cover Madison Paige. Madison Paige is a complex, multifaceted character in Heavy Rain. As an investigative journalist, she embodies determination and curiosity, often putting herself in dangerous situations to uncover the truth. Her insomnia and nightmares hint at a troubled past, adding depth to her character. Madison's interaction with Ethan Mars reveals her compassionate nature. Initially drawn to his story for professional reasons, she develops a genuine empathy for his plight. Her quote, "I suppose I like to play guardian angel," reflects his caring side, as she repeatedly aids Ethan despite personal risk. Her resourcefulness and quick thinking are evident in dangerous situations, such as her encounter with Paco Mendez. Madison's ability to adapt her femininity as a tool, as seen in her time to play sexy girl moment, showcases her pragmatism in pursuit of information. Madison's journalistic integrity comes into conflict with her growth feeling for Ethan. Her confession about initially approaching him as a story, followed by her realization of his genuine love for his son, demonstrates her character growth and eternal struggle between professional ambition and personal ethics. Her determination to prove Ethan's innocence, even in the face of overwhelming evidence, highlights her loyalty, belief, and justice. This further emphasizes by her willingness to confront the true killer and her efforts to save the final victim. Throughout the game, Madison evolves from a detached journalist to an emotionally invested participant in the story she's covering. Her character arc explores themes of trust, redemption, and the blurred lines between professional objectivity and personal involvement. Now let's look at Madison's endings. While hers aren't as dark as Ethan's, they still carry a significant meaning. Take the dead heroine ending, for example. Reporter Brittany Sanders stands over Madison's grave, thinking about her heroic efforts to find the Origami Killer and how she died for it. Then, the cameraman calls her off, and as they leave, Brittany complains about being hungry, showcasing she doesn't really care about Madison's death. If Ethan is still alive and not in jail, he stands from a distance behind a tree, crying as he watches over her grave, saddened by the loss of his friend and possible lover. This ending acknowledges Madison's bravery and dedication to uncovering the truth about the Origami Killer. Her death while investigating Sean Mars' disappearance elevates her to a heroic status, emphasizing the dangers journalists face in pursuit of the truth. The contrast between Brittany Sanders' on-camera eulogy and her off-camera behavior highlights the more often superficial nature of media coverage. This juxtaposition serves as a critique of how the media can sensationalize tragedy while lacking genuine empathy. If Ethan is present, his genuine grief contrasts sharply with the media's performance mourning. This underscores the difference between public spectacle and private, heartfelt sorrow. This ending serves multiple purposes with the game's narrative. It provides closure for Madison's character arc, critiques the media's sensationalization. If Ethan is there, offers a touching moment of genuine emotion amidst the public spectacle. The contrast between the public face of grief and private sorrow adds up to the game's exploration of how society deals with tragedy and heroism.
Journalist Madison Paige was laid to rest in Charity Cross Cemetery today Her heroic death while investigating the disappearance of Sean Mars has made a lasting impression on the whole country. Colleagues from the press are united in paying tribute to this courageous journalist who sacrificed her life in the search for truth. I'm Brittany Sanders for ICN.
Okay, Brittany, it's a wrap.
Great. Let's get out of here. All this hokey clapcuts made me hungry.
Madison's other ending paints her as the heroine of the story. In this scenario, Sean survives, Madison reaches the warehouse and makes it through, and Ethan never kisses Madison. After appearing in the interview Let's Talk Tonight and being hailed as a hero, Madison is seen at a book signing for Heavy Rain. Her account of the investigation while signing the book for a man named Vincent. He tells her that she needs a more ferocious and brutal rival. When she looks up in unease, he had disappeared. This ending presents a complex, intriguing conclusion about Madison's character arc. Her appearance on the Let's Talk Tonight and rumored Pulitzer Prize nomination highlight her transformation from investigative journalist to public hero, validating her efforts and sacrifice throughout the game. The book signing for Heavy Rain symbolizes Madison's professional triumph. She successfully turned her harrowing experiences into a compelling narrative, likely bringing wider attention to the Origami Killer case. The contrast between the adoring public, represented by the woman and the man asking for her signature, and the unsettling encounter with Vincent, demonstrates the gap between public perception and the darker realities Madison faced. Madison's unease when Vincent mentions a more ferocious adversary suggests that despite her success, she still carries the psychological impact of her experiences. This moment serves as a reminder that heroism often comes at a personal cost. Vincent's disappearance leaves an open-ended quality to the conclusion, hinting that despite the apparent resolution of the Origami Killer case, there might be more to the story or new threats on the horizon. This ending effectively balances Madison's public triumph with a sense of unease and potential future conflict. It acknowledges her growth and success while also hinting at the ongoing challenges and dangers that may come with her newfound fame and continued pursuit of the truth. The juxtaposition of public adoration and private discord adds depth to Madison's character, showing that even moments of triumph, the shadows of her experience continue to linger.
Our next guest is rumored to be about to receive a Pulitzer Prize for her remarkable series of investigative articles about the Origami Killer case. Showing incredible courage, her daring intervention led to the arrest of the country's most wanted criminal and saved the life of a little boy. This evening, I welcome a woman who might well be the true definition of a heroine for the ages, Madison Paige. Good evening. Thank you for agreeing to talk with us. Now, you've been described as being both determined and tenacious. Two qualities, no doubt, that were needed to see you through the dark hours of this unbelievable story. Were you afraid at any time?
Thank you, Miss Page. I really admire you for what you've done.
Thank you.
For John, please. We need more journalists like you, Miss Page. It's a good thing you were there to catch that bastard.
Thank you. What's your name?
Vincent. Excellent investigation, Miss Page. You are one brave lady. You deserve a better adversary. Somebody more ferocious.
last of Madison's endings, Squared One, is pretty dark and plays on her known issue, insomnia. To get this ending, Madison survives but doesn't reach the warehouse, and she and Ethan never pursue a romantic relationship. In this ending, Madison is depicted curled up on her stomach in her apartment, ignoring a worried message from her friend Sam. Her insomnia has worsened, and she hallucinates intruders armed with knives surrounding her. Madison's decision to ignore Sam's message highlights her emotional isolation. Even though she has someone who cares about her, she chooses to withdraw, showing a deep sense of loneliness and detachment from those around her. Her worsening insomnia is a significant aspect of her character. Insomnia is often linked to heightened anxiety and stress, which can make mental health issues even worse. Her inability to sleep reflects her ongoing struggle with the trauma she's experienced. Madison clutching her head as hallucinations advance towards her shows she's overwhelmed by anxiety and fear. This physical gesture signifies her inability to escape from her own mind and the relentless nature of her psychological torment. Madison's isolation, despite having friends like Sam who care about her, underscores the difficulty of seeking help when dealing with severe mental health issues. It reflects the common struggle of feeling alone even when support is available. This ending is a powerful and tragic conclusion to Madison's story in Heavy Rain. It delves deep into the themes of mental health, trauma, and isolation, portraying the severe impact of her experiences and her psychological well-being. Madison's struggle with insomnia and hallucinations combined with her emotional isolation paints a vivid picture in the ongoing battle she faces with her trauma. This ending serves as a poignant reminder of the importance of addressing mental health issues and the challenges of overcoming deep-seated psychological distress.
Madison Page, leave me a message.
Matt? Sam? I'm worried about you, girl. You haven't answered your phone in days. Listen, I can't pretend to know what you've been through, but I'm here for you. If you want to talk to someone about it, you know I'm here. Right, I'll try again later on.
Now let's move on to Norman Jayden, an FBI profiler assigned to the Origami Killer case. His character is complex, marked by professionalism, dedication, personal struggles, and relentless pursuit of justice. Jayden's journey throughout the game is characterized by his interactions with other characters, his internal conflicts, and his unwavering commitment to solving the case. As an FBI agent, Norman Jayden is portrayed as highly dedicated and methodical. His approach to the investigation is all about gathering comprehensive information and making rational decisions. This is evident in his quote, "I prefer to have all the information before I make a decision. I try to make rational choices when possible." Jayden's reliance on his RE glasses underscores his commitment to using advanced technology to aid his investigation, highlighting his methodical nature. One of the central dynamics in Jayden's storyline is his conflict with Lieutenant Carter Blake, a local police officer with a more aggressive and less ethical approach to the investigation. Jayden's frustration with Blake's methods are palpable in his quotes like, "Blake, I had just about enough of your crap. You've been chasing this guy for what, 2 years, and what have you caught, huh? Nothing. Absolutely effing nothing." This tension underscores Jayden's commitment to justice and his disdain for Blake's willingness to use violence and coercion to achieve results. Jayden's ethical stance is further highlighted when he intervenes to stop Blake from beating a confession out of Ethan Mars, whom Jayden believes to be innocent. His declaration, "Mars is not the Origami Killer I stake my life on," it demonstrates his confidence in his investigation skills and his moral integrity. Despite his professional competence, Jayden is not without his personal struggles. He is addicted to tryptophan, a drug that helps him cope with the stress of his job, but also poses significant risk to his health and mental stability. This addiction adds layers of vulnerability to his character, as seen in his self-reflective moments. "I'll end up a basket case if this thing keeps going on like this." Jayden's addiction and the physical toll of his job are further emphasized by his frequent expressions of frustration and exhaustion, such as, "He hates the rain when it's soaking wet," and "Geez, this rain won't ever let up. I'm not coming here for a vacation, that's for sure." These quotes reveal constant pressure he faces and the toll it takes on him both physically and mentally. Throughout the game, Jay's determination to solve the case to save Sean Mars is unwavering. His relentless pursuit of the truth is evident in his tireless efforts to piece together clues and his willingness to confront dangerous individuals. His confrontation with a suspect, where he threatens, "Next I'm going to blow a hole in your face, spill it," all of it showcases his willingness to go to great lengths to obtain crucial information. Jaiden's heroism is also highlighted in his final realization that the Origami Killer is a cop, specifically Carter Blake. His examination looks like Killer is a cop, Carter Blake. That would explain the dead-end investigation and desire to frame Ethan Mars. It encapsulates his critical thinking and determination to bring the true culprit to justice, even when it means going against his own colleagues. Let's dive into Norman Jayden's uploaded ending. For this outcome, Jayden would have died during the story. In his ending, Captain Perry informs Lieutenant Carter Blake about Jayden's burial, which Blake chooses not to attend. Perry even allows Blake to keep Jayden's Ari glasses, leading to a chilling experience when Blake uses them. The contrast here is striking. Perry's obligation to attend Jayden's burial as a matter of protocol highlights a professional formality, while Blake's dismissal, "Jayden and I didn't see eye to eye on much," shows a clear lack of respect and personal connection to Jayden. This underscores a professional tension and ethical divide between the two characters throughout the game. The Ari glasses, which were crucial to Jayden's investigative process, symbolizes his meticulous and advanced approach to solving the case. Perry's casual remark, "Well, won't be needing them again, do whatever you want with them," might downplay their significance, but they represent a part of Jayden's identity and methods. Things take a dark turn when Jayden's apparition appears in the Ari interface. His coldly satisfied grin as he advances on Blake symbolizes a form of posthumous retribution. This haunting moment suggests that Jayden's presence and influence continue to linger, unsettling Blake even after Jayden's death. This ending for Jayden is both powerful and thought-provoking, delving into themes of ethical divides, legacy, guilt, and retribution. The contrast between Jayden's meticulous ethical approach and Blake's aggressive methods underscored through their interactions and their eerie experience with the Ari glasses. Jayden's positive influence and the haunting realization for Blake serve as a reminder that actions have lasting consequences. This ending emphasizes the moral complexities of the characters and leaves a significant impact on the narratives.
He's being buried in 2 days in some godforsaken hole in the back end of beyond near Washington. I have to attend as a matter of protocol.
I'll pass. Jayden and I didn't see eye to eye on much.
No problem. I understand.
Hey, sir, I still have his glasses. What should I do with them?
Well, you won't be needing them again. Do whatever you want with them.
Another one of his endings is the resignation ending, which is obtained when Norman survives but does not reach the warehouse, but Sean survives. Norman Jayden resigns from the FBI to the disappointment of his boss, who said that Jayden could have a very promising career ahead of him. He says that the case and his obsession with it made him lose touch with normal life, and he needs to step back from it all. As he hands in his gun and badge, he expresses doubt about ever returning to the Bureau. While he is given a chance to keep his Ari due to the fact that the new model is scheduled to be released next month, he resists the temptation, feeling that it won't help him get back to reality. This could be considered Norman's best ending because he remains sane and gets to start a fresh new life without using Ari or trypticane. Jaden's decision to resign stems from his realization that the case and his work have consumed him, causing him to lose touch with normal life. This highlights the toll that high-stress investigative work can take on individuals' mental well-being. The FBI boss disappointment and the mention of Jaden's promising career contrast with Jaden's need for normalcy, illustrating the tension between professional success and personal fulfillment. Jaden's reluctance to promise and return to the FBI and his hope to find what he's looking for indicate an openness to new possibilities of a new journey of self-discovery. This ending provides closure for Jaden's character arc, showing him choose personal well-being over character advancement and the technological dependence. It leaves the audience with a sense of hope for his future, while also prompting reflection on work balance and the efforts of a high-pressure job on individuals. Let's examine Norman Jaden's smoking mirror ending. In this scenario, Sean dies, but Norman survives. The scene opens with Jaden in an Ari environment. Although he's not wearing the glasses, he's conversing with an off-screen voice about his guilt over failing to save Sean Mars. The voice warns Jaden about the dangers of using trypticane as a solution, hinting that the drug may have already impacted him more than he realizes. The voice is eventually revealed to be a copy of Norman himself. This self-conversation highlights Jaden's intense internal conflict and his desperate attempt to cope with the trauma of the Origami Killer case. As the scene transitions to Jaden in a motel room, the gravity of the situation becomes clear. He's surrounded by empty trypticane vials and is visibly deteriorating from a drug overdose. Jaden's reliance on trypticane, initially meant to counteract the side effects of Ari, has spiraled into a full-blown addiction. The multiple empty vials underscore the severity of his dependence. His physical symptoms, trembling nosebleed and dilated pupils, graphically depict the toll of his addiction. These symptoms also reflect the side effects he experienced from overusing Ari throughout the game. This ending starkly illustrates the destructive impact of Jaden's addiction and his inability to find a healthier way to cope with his experiences. Jaden's death by trypticane overdose serves as a cautionary tale about the perils of substance abuse and the importance of addressing mental health issues. It also critiques the potential risks of immersive technologies like Ari, suggesting that while they can be powerful tools, their misuse can lead to severe psychological consequences.
Are you sure you've thought this through, Norman? You've got a promising career ahead of you. It's a pity that...
With all due respect, sir, I'm done thinking. I need to lead something like a normal life. I've just got a bit too close to everything recently. I need to step back. At least for a while.
Will you be coming back to the FBI?
I don't know. I'm making no promises.
You can keep your Ari if you like. This one's going offline. There's a new model due next month.
I think you better take it back. It's just a little too compelling and, well, it won't help me where I'm going. The real world.
Whatever you want. I hope you find what you're looking for, Norman.
I hope so too.
Moving on, Scott Shelby is a complex and deeply troubled character in the game, whose actions and motivations stem from a traumatic childhood and disoriented sense of justice. As a former police officer turned private investigator, Shelby presents himself as a determined, competent professional dedicated to solving the Origami Killer case. However, this facade masks a disturbed individual grappling with severe psychological issues. Shelby's mental health is profoundly impacted by his childhood experiences, growing up with an abusive alcoholic father who showed little care for his children. Shelby developed a warped understanding of paternal love and sacrifice. The drowning of death by his twin brother, for which Shelby blames his father's negligence, serves as a catalyst for his future actions. This traumatic event left deep psychological scars, manifesting in his obsession with finding a father willing to sacrifice everything for his son. The quote, "Do you have any idea what it feels to be worthless and nothing in your father's eyes? Believe me, I suffer just as much as my victims," reveals the depth of Shelby's emotional pain, its lasting impact on his psyche. His childhood experiences have led to a complex form of post-traumatic stress disorder, coupled with narcissistic personality disorder, that drives his need to prove his worth through his twisted trials. Shelby's relationship with Lauren Winter, the mother of one of his victims, adds another layer to his complex character. While he genuinely seems to care for her, evidenced by his protective behavior, this isn't a game, Lauren. Manfred was murdered because he knew the identity of the Origami Killer. He was 10 feet away from us, for Christ's sakes. No, I can't take another chance on the killer getting close to you again. This relationship built on the foundation of deceit. Shelby's ability to compartmentalize his feelings for Lauren while continuing his killing spree demonstrates the severity of his psychological disassociation. Throughout the game, Shelby maintains a calm professional demeanor, often using humor to deflect tension. This facade of normalcy, combined with his background as a police officer, shows him to move through society undetected, furthering his ability to carry out his crimes. Shelby's ultimate revelation as an Origami Killer showcases the full extent of his psychological breakdown. His twisted logic is evident in statements like, "I've been looking for a long time, Ethan, looking for a father that would be able to do what mine couldn't do, sacrifice himself in order to save his son." This reveals a mind so warped by PTSD that he sees murderous actions as a righteous quest to find true paternal love. There are two other endings attainable in Scott Shelby's character development. Let's start with a mother's revenge ending, where Scott survives in an old warehouse and Lauren survives. This ending is a fitting conclusion to his complex and troubled character. This ending encapsulates the themes of justice, retribution, and the consequences of a life built on deceit and manipulation. Scott is walking down an empty street. It's still raining heavily. Lauren is standing directly in his pathway, waiting for him. As he steps forward, Lauren explains that after calling every last one of the victims' families, none of them, contrary to what Scott said in his introductory line early in the game, ever hired Scott to find the killer. He only visited the families of his victims to destroy the evidence incriminating him. Lauren says she swore on her child's grave that she will kill the man who killed him, finishing by saying, "I'll keep that promise." She then pulls out a gun and shoots Scott in the head as the screen cuts to black, leaving her promise kept. Scott Shelby's dual identity as a private investigator and an Origami Killer is central to his character. Throughout the game, Shelby presents himself as a dedicated professional, ostensibly hired by the families of the victims to find the killers. However, Lauren Winter's confrontation reveals the truth. Shelby was never hired by these families. Instead, he visited them to destroy evidence that would incriminate him. This revelation exposed the depth of Shelby's deception and the extent to which he manipulated those around him to cover his tracks. Lauren's line, "None of the families of the victims ever hired you, did they, Scott? I called every last one of them," highlights her determination and resourcefulness. Despite her initial vulnerability, she takes it upon herself to uncover the truth, demonstrating significant character growth and resilience. Lauren Winter's promise to avenge her son's death is a driving force in this ending. Her vow, "I swore on my son's grave that I would kill the man who murdered him. I'm going to keep my word," underscores the theme of retribution. Lauren's actions are fueled by a profound sense of loss and desire for justice. Her confrontation with Shelby is not just about personal vengeance, it's also about fulfilling a promise she made to her deceased child. Shelby's reaction to Lauren's accusation is telling. He does not attempt to deny or justify his actions, indicating a resignation of his fate. This moment of reckoning is a culmination of his life choices, and Lauren's act of shooting him serves as a final judgment for his crimes. The heavy rain in the scene is symbolic of Shelby's life and actions. Rain recurring is a motif of the game, often associated with the Origami Killer's crimes. The constant downpour reflects the persistent and inescapable nature of Shelby's guilt and the consequences of his actions. As he walks down the deserted street, the rain serves as a backdrop for his impending doom, emphasizing the inevitability of his fate.
None of the families of the victims ever hired you, did they, Scott? I called every last one of them. All you did was collect the evidence you'd left behind. Wipe out your past and feed on the misery of the parents whose children you'd killed. I swore on my son's grave that I would kill the man who murdered him. I'm gonna keep my word.
The last ending I'll discuss is arguably the darkest of them all. It leaves the story hanging on a cliffhanger, known as the unpunished ending. This scenario unfolds with Scott Shelby surviving the events in the old warehouse while Lauren Winter died in the car. In this ending, Scott Shelby is now exposed to the Origami Killer, is seen walking freely down a crowded sidewalk. The scene implies that Shelby has successfully evaded justice and escaped the consequences of his heinous crimes. Despite the gravity of his actions, he faces no legal or personal repercussions. Shelby's ability to blend seamlessly into the crowd symbolizes his successful reintegration into normal life, untouched by the repercussions of his evil deeds. This ending underscores the failure of the justice system to apprehend and punish the true perpetrator, presenting a morally complex and unsettling conclusion. Unlike other endings where Shelby meets his end or faces capture, this one leaves his fate unresolved. It challenges the conventional expectation ending may invoke a sense of unease or frustration among players, offering a sharp contrast to more satisfying resolutions where justice is served. Now that we covered the characters, it's time to look at one of the main themes of the game: mental health. One thing that carries over from Fahrenheit, though not as a gameplay element, is the exploration of mental health. All four main protagonists, as well as some supporting characters, experience mental health issues in various forms. Ethan Mars, for instance, suffers from blackouts, a form of PTSD, and ankylophobia, fear of crowds. His mental health struggles drive players to root for his success and emphasize with his plight, hoping to prevent his potential self-destruction. Madison Page's insomnia significantly impacts her life, as evidenced in her recurring nightmares of intruders trying to kill her. While the game doesn't fully explore the reasons behind her severe insomnia, it can be inferred that loneliness attributes to her condition. This is particularly noticeable in endings, where she does not end up with Ethan, suggesting that he completes her in some sort of way. Norman Jayden's most prominent mental health issue is his drug addiction. He uses tryptophan to mitigate the negative effects of the RE, becoming both physically and psychologically dependent on it. Jayden frequently battled withdrawal symptoms such as anxiety, cold sweats, nausea, and tremors, highlighting his struggle with addiction and its impact on mental health. Lastly, the central antagonist, Scott Shelby, exhibits significant mental health issues stemming from childhood trauma, particularly the loss of his brother. Shelby's dissociative tendencies allow him to compartmentalize his actions as the Origami Killer while maintaining a seemingly normal life. His narcissistic traits are evident in his belief that his actions are justified and his manipulation of others reflecting a deeply disturbed psyche. In Heavy Rain, mental health intricately is woven into the gameplay and narrative. Players' decisions and actions are influenced by the character's psychological states, creating a more immersive and emotionally engaging experience. The realistic portrayal of mental health issues enhances the narrative, making the character's journeys more compelling and relatable. Heavy Rain significantly improves upon the theme of mental health compared to Fahrenheit, while offering a more realistic, nuanced, and empathetic portrayal of psychological struggles by focusing on the grounded, relatable issues and integrating them into the gameplay and narrative. Heavy Rain provides a deeper and more meaningful exploration of mental health, allowing players to connect with the characters on a profound level. The game represents a significant milestone in interactive storytelling, blending the cinematic techniques of film with the immersive capabilities of video games. It incorporates elements of cinematic storytelling and genre crossover, emotional depth, and interactive narrative to create a unique experience that blurs the line between gaming and film. The game's use of realistic character models and meticulously detailed environments mirrors the visual aesthetics of the movies, creating an experience that feels both intimate and cinematic. Emotionally charged scenes combined with the game's deliberate pacing and framing echo the narrative style of films, demonstrating how video games can harness cinematic techniques to tell compelling stories. The game draws substantial inspiration from thriller and mystery films, showcasing similarities to cinematic works such as Seven and Identity. By incorporating elements from these genres, Heavy Rain highlights how video games can adapt and reinterpret cinematic genres and tropes. This crossover underscores the versatility of video games as a storytelling medium, capable of integrating and evolving established cinematic conventions to craft new narrative experiences. Heavy Rain illustrates that video games can achieve emotional resonance and character development comparable to those found in dramatic films. The game's focused, complex characters and their psychological struggle mirrors the depth seen in cinematic storytelling through its nuanced portrayal of human emotions and interpersonal relationships. Heavy Rain challenges the notion that video games are limited in their capacity to convey profound emotional experiences. One of the most innovative aspects of Heavy Rain is the interactive narrative structure, which allows players to influence the course of the story through their choices. This interactive approach extends beyond traditional linear film narratives, offering a new dimension to storytelling. The player's ability to shape the narrative outcomes highlights how interactive media can provide a more personalized and engaging storytelling experience compared to static films. The game's use of rain as a persistent visual and thematic element is reminiscent of its use in films to create mood and atmosphere. In Heavy Rain, the contrast downpour not only serves as a visual motif, but also enhances the game's emotional and thematic undertones. This demonstrates how video games can employ cinematic techniques to build atmosphere and immerse players in the story, further blurring the boundary between gaming and film. The interest in film rights for Heavy Rain indicates that the game industry is producing content considered viable for cinematic adaptation. This trend emphasizes the growing convergence between video games and film, where the narrative potential of interactive media is increasingly recognized as compatible with cinematic storytelling. It reflects the potential for video games to be adapted to film, suggesting a future where the distinctions between these forms of media become increasingly blurred. Much like art houses or independent films, Heavy Rain is unafraid to explore mundane aspects of life to build character and atmosphere. This approach challenges the conventional belief that video games must always prioritize action or excitement. By focusing on everyday experiences and personal struggles, the game adds depth to its narrative and characters, offering a more contemplative and introspective gaming experience. While Heavy Rain draws from film noir and thriller genres, it also subverts some cinematic cliches, providing a critique of reinterpretation of common movie tropes. This aspect of the game highlights its ability to engage with and challenge established genre conventions, offering a fresh perspective on familiar storytelling elements. In essence, Heavy Rain positions itself as a bridge between cinema and video games, demonstrating how interactive media can adopt and enhance cinematic qualities while also pushing the boundaries of traditional film storytelling. The convergence of these forms suggests that the future of narrative entertainment may lie in a fusion of watching and participating, where the line between experiencing a story and actively engaging with it becomes increasingly indistinguishable. Heavy Rain represents a notable experiment in interactive storytelling within video games, employing a variety of gameplay mechanics that blend narrative and player agency. One of the core gameplay mechanics in Heavy Rain is the use of QuickTime events, or QTEs for short. QTEs are context-sensitive prompts that require players to perform specific actions on the control device shortly after they appear on the screen. This mechanic transforms cinematic cutscenes to interactive experiences, allowing players to influence the outcome of dramatic moments. The game also incorporates some motion control, which add another layer of interactivity to the gameplay. By integrating motion controls with traditional button inputs, Heavy Rain enhances the player's engagement with the game's narrative and action sequences. Heavy Rain distinguishes itself by allowing players to control multiple characters throughout the story. This mechanic offers various perspectives on the game's events, encouraging players to explore different viewpoints and abilities. Playing from the perspective of different characters not only deepens the narrative experience, but also provides a more comprehensive understanding to the story's complexities. Each character's unique skills and experiences contribute to a richer, more layered portrayal of the game's world and its unfolding drama. A pivotal aspect of Heavy Rain is its emphasis on the player's choice and consequence. The game's interactive drama format means that decisions made by the player significantly affect the narrative and lead to multiple possible endings. This system ensures that each player's experience is personalized and distinct, as choices impact the progression and resolution of the story. The emphasis on choice and consequence adds substantial replay value, as players may wish to explore different outcomes and see how alternative decisions alter the game's events. The integration of QTEs and other interactive elements is designed to bridge the gap between passive cutscenes and active gameplay. By incorporating these mechanics, Heavy Rain seeks to immerse players more deeply into the narrative, making them feel directly involved in the unfolding drama. The gameplay elements are carefully crafted to support the story-driven nature of the game, with interactive features serving the narrative rather than existing as separate entities. This approach aims to create a seamless and engaging experience that enhances the emotional impact of the story. While QTEs contribute to the interactivity and cinematic moments, they're not without their controversy. Some players find QTEs intrusive or feel that they fall short of creating the intended sense of excitement. The effectiveness of these mechanics in delivering a truly immersive and engaging experience may vary depending on individual player preferences and expectations. Criticisms often center whether QTEs enhance the gameplay or detract from the overall experience. QTEs can elevate action sequences by engaging players more directly, potentially leading to a greater emotional impact. By requiring players to interact with cutscenes, QTE theoretically makes these moments more immersive than passive viewing. The interactive element ensures players remain active participants in the narrative, heightening their investment in the unfolding events. Poorly implemented QuickTime events can lead to player frustration, especially if they are too difficult or frequent. Excessive reliance on QTEs can make gameplay feel repetitive and reduce a player's enjoyment, counteracting with the intended immersive effect. The effectiveness of QuickTime events in creating immersion can vary greatly depending on the individual player preferences and expectations. While some players appreciate the added interactivity and cinematic flair, others may find QTEs intrusive or unnecessary. In conclusion, Heavy Rain employs a range of gameplay mechanics including QuickTime events, motion controls, multiple character perspectives, and a system of choice and consequence to create an interactive narrative experience. These elements are interactively designed to immerse players in the story and enhance their involvement in unfolding drama. While the effectiveness of these mechanics can be subject to individual opinions, they collectively contribute to a unique and innovative approach to storytelling in video games. Heavy Rain was exclusively released for the PlayStation 3 back in February of 2010. The PS3 port of Heavy Rain was noticeable for its impressive graphical fidelity and technical prowess. Quantic Dream pushed the PlayStation 3 hardware to its limits, delivering stunning visuals that rivaled the artistry of 2D design. The game's environments, from rain-soaked streets to crowded public spaces, are meticulously detailed, creating a tangible and immersive world. This attention to detail enhances the narrative, making players feel as though they are part of a living, breathing environment. The Collector's Edition of Heavy Rain, exclusive to the HMV in the UK, offered fans a unique packaging that included several exclusive items. The most striking feature was the case, designed to look as though it was doused in fake raindrops, capturing the game's atmospheric essence. Additionally, the Collector's Edition included a fold-out poster and redeemable PlayStation Network PSN code. This code provided access to the dynamic theme in the Heavy Rain Chronicles, the Taxidermist, an additional episode that allowed players to control Madison Page as he explored a serial killer's house. Despite some initial issues with redeeming the code for the official soundtrack, the Collector's Edition added value for fans and collectors. The Director's Cut of Heavy Rain, released later, provided an enhanced experience for players. This edition included several new features and improvements. The Director's Cut featured improved graphics, taking advantage of the PS3 capabilities to deliver an even more visually stunning experience. It included the Taxidermist DLC, offering players a more insight into Madison Page's character and additional gameplay. The Director's Cut came with the game's official soundtrack, allowing players to enjoy the atmospheric music outside the game. The PS3 port of Heavy Rain, along with its exclusive features and Director's Cut edition, showcased Quantic Dream's commitment to pushing the boundaries of interactive storytelling. The game's impressive visuals, unique gameplay mechanics, and emphasis on choice in additional content and enhancements. The director's cut provided players with even more reasons to explore the game's rich narrative. Heavy Rain's success on the PS3 paved the way for future innovations in the genre, solidifying its place as a landmark title in video game history. Moving on to the PS4 port that was released in 2016, the most noticeable upgrade in the PS4 version is the increased resolution. While the PS3 version ran at 720, the PS4 port boasts a full 1080p resolution, resulting in a sharper image quality. This enhancement is particularly evident in the character models and environmental details, providing a crispier overall presentation. Texture quality has also seen improvement in the PS4 version. The higher resolution textures contribute to a more detailed game world, enhancing the visual fidelity of both characters and environments. This upgrade helped maintain Heavy Rain's reputation for pushing graphical boundaries, even years after its initial release. Lighting has also been refined in the PS4 port, with improved shading techniques adding depth and atmosphere to the scenes. However, it's worth noting that some viewers have observed the PS4 port appears darker overall compared to its PS3 counterpart, which may affect visibility in certain scenes. The PS4 port of Heavy Rain benefits from improved frame rate stability. While both versions target 30 frames per second, the PS4 version maintains this target more consistently, resulting in smoother gameplay and animations. This enhancement contributes to a more fluid interactive experience, particularly during action-heavy sequences. Despite the visual and performance improvements, the PS4 port is now without its drawbacks. Some players have reported issues with the pre-rendered cutscene, noticing increased comprehension artifacts and playback problems compared to the PS3 version. This unexpected downgrade in video quality is noticeable blemish on an otherwise improved visual presentation. Additionally, some effects in the PS3 version have been removed or altered in the PS4 port. For instance, changes to the motion blur implementation have been observed, with some scenes losing the effect entirely. While this may lead to a cleaner image and motion, it also represents a departure from this original artistic vision. Early players of the PS4 port reported bugs causing gameplay interruptions, requiring save reloads to progress. While such issues are often addressed through the post-release patches, their presence at launch was a concern for some players. The PS4 port of Heavy Rain offers a visually enhanced version of Quantic Dream's narrative-driven experience. With improved resolution, texture quality, and performance stability, it presents a more polished rendition of the game. However, issues with pre-rendered scenes and the removal of certain visual effects prevent it from being unequivocal upgrade over the PS3 original. The last port, and the one that surprised me, was the PC port that dropped in 2019. The PC version of Heavy Rain represents a substantial visual upgrade over its console predecessors. While the PS3 version ran at 720 and the PS4 remastered at 1080p, the PC port supports resolutions up to 4K and beyond. This leap in resolution, combined with improved texture quality and additional post-processing effects like screen space and ambient occlusion, results in a sharper, more detailed game world. Character models in particular benefit from these enhancements, showcasing the game's impressive facial animations with greater fidelity. One of the most significant improvements in the PC port was the increased frame rate. While both console versions were locked in at 30 frames per second, the PC version offers options for 30 frames, 60 frames, and even uncapped frame rates, though it requires tweaking in files. The smoother gameplay at higher frame rates enhances the overall experience, particularly during the quick-time events and action sequences. However, it's worth noting that some animations and camera movements occasionally revert to 30 frames per second, a remnant of the game's console origins. The PC port offers a range of graphical settings, allowing players to tailor the visual experience to their hardware capabilities. This flexibility is a significant advantage over the more fixed settings of console versions. Anti-aliasing options have been expanded, with choices including FXAA, SMAA, and various levels of MSAA, resulting in improved image stability compared to the console versions. The PC version introduces mouse and keyboard support, offering an alternative to the gameplay-centric design of the console versions. While some players find this control scheme more intrusive, others still prefer using the gamepad, which is fully supported. The adaptation of controls for PC has addressed some of the awkwardness experienced in the PS3 version, though the core gameplay mechanics remain largely unchanged. Despite its improvements, the PC port is not without its issues. Some users have reported performance problems including stuttering and frame rate drops, particularly on lower end systems. There have also been instances of resolution scaling issues and bugs carried over from previous versions, such as the occasional movement glitches. In terms of content, the PC version is largely identical to the PS4 remaster. However, it's worth noting the Taxidermist DLC, which was included in some of the editions of the PS3 version, is not present in either the PS4 or PC releases. This omission may disappoint completionists or fans of the original release. The PC port of Heavy Rain offers a more technically advanced version of the game to date. With improved visuals, higher frame rates, and greater customization options, it provides an enhanced experience for both newcomers and returning players. However, the port also carries some legacy issues and optimization challenges that presented from being a flawless transition to the PC platform. For PC gamers who missed out on the game's original release, this port presents an excellent opportunity to experience Heavy Rain's compelling narrative and unique gameplay. For those who have played the console versions, the visual performance enhancement may justify revisiting the game. Though the core content remains unchanged, ultimately the PC port of Heavy Rain successfully brings Quantic Dream's interactive drama to a new platform, preserving its cinematic storytelling while leveraging the capabilities of modern PC hardware. Despite some technical hiccups, it stands as a solid adaptation that extends the game's legacy to a broader audience. When Heavy Rain was released in February 2010, it was met with a mixture of acclaim and criticism, reflecting on its innovative approach to interactive storytelling and its polarizing gameplay mechanics. Heavy Rain was widely praised for its ambitious narrative and emotional depth. The game's story, which revolves around 4 protagonists trying to uncover the identity of the Origami Killer, was lauded for its complexity and mature themes. Critics and players appreciate the game's ability to evoke strong emotional responses, a feat rarely achieved in video games at the time. The use of multiple perspectives allowed players to experience the story from different angles, adding layers of depth and engagement. The game's emphasis on player choice and consequence was another aspect that received positive attention. The decisions players made had a significant impact on the story's progression and its multiple possible endings. This mechanic gave players a sense of agency and responsibility, making their actions feel meaningful and impactful. Heavy Rain's cinematic presentation was a standout feature that drew comparisons to film noir and psychological thrillers. The game's detailed environments and realistic character models and atmospheric lighting contributed to its immersive experience. The persistent rain, a central motif in the game, added to the overall mood and tension, creating a somber and suspenseful atmosphere. The game's soundtrack, composed by Normad Cormel, was also praised for its ability to enhance the emotional weight of the narrative. The music effectively underscored key moments, heightening the impact of the story's dramatic twists and turns. However, Heavy Rain's gameplay mechanics, particularly its reliance on quick-time events, were a point of contention. While some players appreciated the interactive nature of quick-time events, others found them intrusive and disruptive in the immersion. The game's control scheme, which required precise inputs during intense moments, was criticized for being cumbersome and unintuitive at times. Critics also pointed out that the game's heavy reliance on quick-time events limited the depth of its gameplay. Some felt that it was more of an interactive movie than a traditional video game, which limited opportunities for exploration and player agency outside scripted events. One of the most prominent criticisms leveled against Heavy Rain was its plot inconsistencies and logical flaws. As players replayed the game or discussed its narrative intricacies, numerous plot holes became apparent. The revelation of the Origami Killer's identity in particular was scrutinized for its lack of coherence with earlier events in the story. Some critics pointed out that certain character actions and motivations didn't align with their established personalities or the game's internal logic. The quality of writing and dialogue was another area that drew criticism. While the game aims for a mature, emotionally resonant narrative, many found the dialogue to be clinched and at times poorly written. The voice acting, especially in the English version, was often described as inconsistent or unconvincing, which detracted from the game's attempts at creating a cinematic experience. Heavy Rain's gameplay mechanics, particularly its reliance on quick-time events, were a divisive aspect. Some players felt appreciated in the integration of these events and into the narrative flow, while others found them restrictive and frustrating. Critics argued that QTE-heavy gameplay limited player agency and reduced the game to a series of elaborate but impressive sequences rather than offering meaningful interactivity. The game's pacing and structure also came under fire. Some reviewers noted that the game sections, especially in the earlier parts of the game, felt slow and uneventful. The mundane tasks players were required to perform, while intending to build character and atmosphere, were seen in some as tedious and unnecessary. Character development was another point of contention. While the main characters were generally perceived well, supporting characters were often criticized for being underdeveloped or relying too heavily on stereotypes. This issue contributed to the sense that the game's emotional impact was inconsistent across its cast. Technical issues including glitches and awkward animations were reported by many players. These problems sometimes broke immersion and highlighted the limitations of the game's ambitious visual presentation. Some critics and players questioned the game's replayability. Despite boasting multiple endings and branching pathways, many felt that subsequent playthroughs revealed the limitations of the game's choice system, with some decisions feeling less impactful than initially perceived. The game's handling of mature themes including violence and sexuality was both praised and criticized. While some appreciated the adult-oriented content, others felt certain scenes, particularly those involving female characters, were gratuitous or poorly handled. Today, Heavy Rain is regarded as a seminal work in the evolution of narrative-driven games. Its influence can be seen in many contemporary titles that prioritize storytelling and player choice. The game's success demonstrated that there is a market for mature, emotionally complex narratives in video games, paving the way for other developers to explore similar themes. While some of the game's mechanics and narrative elements may feel dated, Heavy Rain's impact on the industry is undeniable. It remains a touchstone for discussions about the potential of video games as a storytelling medium and continues to be studied and referenced by developers and scholars alike. So I spent a lot of time with Heavy Rain and other David Cage's games, and let me tell you, this game is something special. Looking back, Heavy Rain really feels like David Cage's magnum opus. It blends gameplay and story in a way that not many interactive storytelling games manage to pull off. One of the best things about Heavy Rain is how your choices really matter. Unlike some of Cage's earlier games like Fahrenheit, where the only big consequence was at the end, Heavy Rain offers a bunch of different outcomes based on what you decide. Light spoiler, everyone in the game can either die or live, depending on your choices. It's up to you to shape the story, making a playthrough unique and personal. Judging a game like this based on story can be tricky because you as a player make the story unfold. Sometimes I wasn't thrilled with the choices I had, but that's the point of the game. It makes you think about your own moral values. Do you play it safe or do you take risks? Despite a few plot holes, the story holds up pretty well and feels grounded in reality. It's not just a supernatural tale. It feels like something that could really happen. The unpredictable nature of serial killers is portrayed convincingly, adding to the game's cinematic experience. Compared to other David Cage games, Heavy Rain delves deeper into mental health. While Fahrenheit had mental health system, Heavy Rain really explores how mental health issues impact different characters, regular people, serial killers, and investigators alike. I've got to give Cage credit for tackling such a complex topic and showing how mental health affects everyone differently. The storytelling in Heavy Rain is so good that it feels like it deserves an Oscar if it were a movie. The way the game creates a cinematic experience through interactive gameplay is impressive. If you enjoy interactive movies and strong character-driven stories, this game is right up your alley. Thank you so much for watching to the end of this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel for more content like this. Hit the notification bell to stay up to date on all our latest uploads. If you have any retrospective requests or suggestions, feel free to drop them in the comment section down below. This is the Retro Phantom, signing out.